What's going on? You didn't make lunch today. My husband suddenly yelled at me over the phone. He sounded upset that I hadn't prepared his lunch and that I wasn't home. I reminded him I had told him to manage by himself while I was out, but he retorted, "Aren't you a housewife? That's your job, right?" He even mentioned how I had been a housewife instead of pursuing my studies. It was frustrating. How could he make such a big deal about missing lunch for one day? I was tired of doing all the housework and then being scolded when things didn't go perfectly for him. As he yelled over the phone, my mother-in-law stood nearby, listening. She had a faint smile on her face. "My name is Emily. I live with my husband, Nicholas, and our two adorable twin boys, Seth and Ray, who are 2 years old. They are the light of my life and the biggest source of my happiness right now." Nicholas works as a businessman for a large company. His family owns a traditional Japanese confectionery store located in a small shopping arcade. After we got married, I quit my job and started helping out at the store. At first, I enjoyed it. It felt like a fresh, exciting experience. However, working at the store turned out to be busier than I expected. Besides serving customers and showcasing beautiful traditional sweets, wagashi, I also had to prepare sweets in the kitchen early in the morning, especially during busy seasons. Even after the twins were born, I kept working at the store. Sometimes, I'd work with one of the boys strapped to my back. Their cries would echo through the store, even when I was trying to keep them out of earshot. Balancing childcare and work was exhausting. Unlike me, Nicholas wasn't interested in the family business. "Do you have any plans to take over the store?" I asked him one day. "We've talked about this before," he said, annoyed. "I've told you, I'm not taking it over. Wagashia isn't popular anymore. The shopping arcade gets fewer visitors every year. If I take over now, I won't have a future." Nicholas had no intention of running the confectionery shop. He was too focused on his career in a larger corporation, leaving the family business and its struggles entirely up to us. My thoughts on the family store. I love my in-laws' confectionery shop and don't want to see it disappear. "Are you going to pachinko again today, Nicholas?" I asked. "Of course I am," he replied. "What I do on my day off is my business." On holidays, my husband spends his time playing pachinko. He even lines up early to get in when it opens. While he enjoys his day off, he completely ignores housework. I'm the one handling everything: cooking, cleaning, laundry, and all the other housework. On top of that, I take care of our twin boys and help run the family confectionery shop. Nicholas, on the other hand, takes life at his own pace, leaving me overwhelmed with the growing workload. My in-laws are getting older, which means there's even more to do at the store. Despite this, my mother-in-law has always been incredibly kind and understanding. "Emily, we're so grateful for all the help you give us at the shop," she would say, her voice warm with gratitude. She's a lovely woman and treats me with genuine kindness. Her gentle smile always lifts my spirits. But it's clear that she wishes Nicholas would step up and take an interest in the family business. Whenever we talk about him, she looks sad. "I really need Nicholas's assistance," she once said. Unfortunately, he shows no signs of wanting to take over the confectionery shop, which deeply disappoints her. Support from my mother-in-law. Even though my husband refuses to help or take responsibility, my mother-in-law is incredibly supportive. "Well, we're lucky to have such a wonderful wife like Emily," she said. "We shouldn't be greedy." She always praises me and appreciates how I manage the store while raising my children. When I'm working, she and my father-in-law babysit the kids, which is a huge help. Over time, my bond with my mother-in-law has grown stronger. She's become someone I can talk to about anything, even my frustrations with my husband. Ironically, the more distant I feel from him, the closer I feel to her. Having my in-laws around is a great comfort during these busy times. Raising my two boys is so busy that the days blur together. There's hardly any time to think about much else. Now, as the end of the year approaches, the confectionery shop is getting even busier. This is the peak season for gift giving, and we're transitioning to meet the increased demand. After discussing with my in-laws, we decided that I'd stay home this year to focus on preparing wagashi. When I told Nicholas about staying at my parents' place for one night to help during the busy season, he was clearly upset. "What, you're taking the kids and staying at your parents' house?" he asked, annoyed. I explained it was just for one night and assured him there wasn't much to worry about. But as expected, he started complaining. "What about the housework?" he asked. "Nicholas doesn't do any housework, so even one day without me managing everything is a big problem for him." I tried to reassure him. It's only one night. Everything will be fine. If you get hungry, you can prepare something for yourself. There's no need to do laundry for just one day. You'll survive. Still, he grumbled, you're a housewife, aren't you? Isn't this your responsibility? I'll say it again, I'm the breadwinner of this family. I told my husband, who do you think is in charge of feeding our 2 kids? He grumbled in response, and I didn't want to argue anymore, so I said nothing else and took the kids to my in-laws' house without asking my husband for permission. When I arrived at my parents' house, there was a lot of work waiting for me. It was the end of the year, and business at the confectionery shop was picking up quickly. Orders for year-end gifts were pouring in, and I knew I had made the right decision to help out. The first task was assembling empty boxes for the gifts. It was harder than it sounded, especially since hundreds of boxes had to be prepared for the season. My in-laws and I worked together to get it done. By the end of the first day, I was exhausted, but the next morning, I had to get up early to prepare wagashi sweets for the day ahead. I decided to go to bed early so I could start working right when the sun rose. While the kids were still asleep, my in-laws and I worked quietly in the kitchen. Before I knew it, the sun was up, and we decided to take a break for breakfast. The kids were already awake and ready for breakfast, so I quickly made it and served them. As we sat down together, my phone rang. It was my husband. What's going on? You didn't make lunch today? He yelled at me as soon as I picked up. He was upset because there was no lunch prepared, and he seemed to think it was my job to do it even though I was away. I told him to make his own lunch while I was gone, but he didn't like that response. He accused me of avoiding housework, even though he never helps out. It was ridiculous to make such a big deal about not having lunch for just one day. I was shocked by his reaction, and it seemed my in-laws were too because they could hear him yelling through the phone. Finally, he rambled on about whatever he wanted to say before abruptly hanging up the phone. Even though breakfast was just served, the living room at my in-laws' house was unusually quiet for a while. My husband had lost his temper in an unreasonable way, which wasn't surprising. The kids seemed to sense the tension and didn't want to eat. Trying to lighten the mood, my mother-in-law cheerfully said, "Itadakamasu," a phrase said before meals in Japan, and encouraged my sons to eat. Then, she turned to me and said, "Why don't you divorce my son, Emily?" I froze as I reached for my tea. I never expected my mother-in-law to say something like that. My father-in-law quietly ate his breakfast, his face unreadable. I know this might sound harsh, but now that you've heard this, maybe it'll help you see things clearly, my mother-in-law continued with a smile. It seemed like when someone is truly disgusted, they can only laugh. "I feel terrible for you as a mother," she said. "You don't need to be merciful with my son anymore. Let your emotions guide you." It was clear my mother-in-law understood how I felt about my husband. She was on my side, and that was a relief. My father-in-law didn't speak, but he nodded in agreement with my mother-in-law's words. Their support was comforting. Returning home and preparing for a talk, later that evening, I went back home, mentally prepared for what I needed to do. When my husband returned home, he had a tense look on his face, still upset that I hadn't made his lunch. I asked him to sit down because I needed to talk to him. "What do you want to talk about?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Ignoring his mood, I insisted, "Sit down, I need to speak with you." When my husband sat down, I handed him the divorce papers. "I'm going to divorce you," I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. His grumpy expression quickly turned to one of shock. "Why are you suddenly talking about divorce? Are you kidding? The kids are still so young," he said, panicking. He didn't understand why I wanted a divorce and tried to avoid the conversation by claiming it wasn't valid, but I wasn't going to let him avoid this. I pulled out some photos from an envelope on the table. One photo showed my husband walking hand in hand with a woman. "Didn't you say you go to pachinko on your days off? What is this? You seem to be having a good time," I said, showing him the photo. His face went pale when he saw it. I pressed him to explain. "No, this is, well," he started, trying to come up with an excuse. He claimed she was just an acquaintance, but when I mentioned that she worked at his company, he froze. She was a junior employee, and he'd been having an affair with her. For a while, I had suspected something was wrong, so I'd talked to my mother-in-law about it. She suggested I hire a detective. When I did, the results shocked me. The investigator showed me more photos of my husband entering a pachinko parlor with the woman and then going to her room. "I have more photos," I said. "You two are very close, so the investigator was able to take many pictures. Would you like to see more?" Finally, faced with the undeniable evidence, My husband admitted to everything. Yes, I've been seeing her. I'm sorry, Emily, he said. I was just playing with fire. I'm sorry for the kids. I'll leave her right now, so please don't divorce me. His apology was desperate, but I had made up my mind. I'm dead set on getting a divorce. I'm not joking, I told him firmly. There was no way I could forgive him. Standing up for myself, I've been helping at your parents' house while babysitting, and I've been taking care of things you didn't want me to, I told my husband. I've told your parents everything, and they're on my side, not yours. They've said they'll help me in any way they can. We worked together, so there was plenty of time to talk, and they were both furious at him. I also told them that we were getting a divorce. When I told him, my husband completely lost his cool. He broke down in tears. Please, I would never do something like this, he begged. He was so overwhelmed by my decision that all he could do was mutter that he didn't want a divorce. I can't be with you anymore, I said. I will make sure you pay alimony and child support. He begged for forgiveness, getting on his knees, but I refused to listen. As a result, we divorced. I insisted on alimony payments from both him and the woman he had the affair with. He also had to pay child support for our children. After the divorce, my husband chose to resign from his job, and the woman lost her position too after the company found out about their affair. My in-laws were furious and told my husband he would be cut off from the family and barred from the family home. With no one to rely on, he had to work from morning to night in manual labor just to pay his bills. A new beginning. After the divorce, I continued working at the Wagashia confectionery. My in-laws asked me to stay, and I enjoyed working there. I needed to support my children, and they wanted me to run the store after they retire. Eventually, they planned to give me the store and their home. Naturally, I intended to take over, and in the future, I will be the owner of the confectionery. I will continue working hard at my job while raising my children, looking ahead to the future.
I stared at myself in the bathroom mirror, a familiar stranger looking back at me. My fingers traced the faint lines slowly etching themselves across my forehead. Tiny cracks in the facade I had worked so hard to maintain. Sometimes love isn't the hard part, I murmured. It's watching it turn to something else that's tough. A muffled chuckle from the other side of the door pulled me back to the present moment. Sarah, my best friend since college, always found a way to lighten the mood. Come on, Thea. We're going to be late for Ava's thing. Smoothing down my dress, I took a deep breath and rejoined the party happening just on the other side of that door. My eyes immediately found Saul across the room, his warm smile beckoning me over. He always had a way of making me feel like the center of his world, even when we were surrounded by others. As I made my way through the crowd, snippets of conversation swirled around me. Talk of career moves, new homes, and growing families. All the things I thought I had plenty of time for. Saul's arm snaked around my waist as I reached his side, anchoring me. There you are, he grinned, planting a kiss on my cheek. You know, I've been thinking. Here it comes, I mused, suppressing an eye roll. Saul never could resist an opportunity to pitch one of his big ideas. But before he could elaborate, Ava bounced over, eyes sparkling with the giddy excitement only she could muster. You two are just too precious, she gushed, squeezing my arm. I can't wait for you guys to start your own little family. The smile froze on my face as Saul tensed beside me. Family. The one loaded topic we had been studiously avoiding since our whirlwind marriage 2 years ago. I opened my mouth to deflect, but Saul beat me to it. Actually, I wanted to run something by Thea. He paused, gauging my reaction. My cousin Mira? She's going through a really tough time right now. Some psycho ex won't leave her alone, and I was thinking maybe she could stay with us for a little while. The words hung in the air as I processed his request. An indefinite house guest was the last thing I wanted cluttering up the life we'd built, but the pleading look in Saul's eyes gave me pause. He came from such a broken family. Was this his way of piecing one back together? Yeah, sure, if you think that's best, I finally managed, plastering on a smile as Ava squealed in delight. Little did I know that one decision would unravel everything. The doorbell's shrill ring shattered the peaceful quiet of our apartment. I glanced up from my tablet, brow furrowed as Saul hurried to answer it. This was it, the day our unwanted guest arrived. Mira, God, it's been too long. Saul's voice carried easily through the open-concept living space as he ushered her inside. I steeled myself for the introduction, standing to get my first look at the woman who would be occupying our spare room for the foreseeable future. Younger than me by nearly a decade, she had a delicate beauty marred only by the guarded look in her hazel eyes. Tucking a loose strand of chestnut hair behind her ear, she offered me a tight smile. "You must be Thea," she said softly. "I'm Mira. Thank you so much for letting me stay." The words sounded sincere enough, but something about her demeanor set me on edge. I forced a polite nod. "Of course. Make yourself at home." Saul beamed, seemingly oblivious to the subtle tension crackling between us. "I'll give you the tour. Did I mention Mira went to Cornell too? Best investment the old trust fund ever made." My eyebrows inched upward at his offhand comment. Trust fund? I couldn't recall Saul ever mentioning his cousin came from money, just more questions in the ever-growing pile. Over the next few days, Mira settled into our routines with unsettling ease. Quiet and unobtrusive, she was a model houseguest on the surface. But there was no missing the way Saul's eyes would linger a beat too long whenever she entered a room, or the slight flush that would creep up her neck when he was near. "You're imagining things," Sarah chided one afternoon, swirling her wineglass. "They're just a little too comfortable being related, that's all." I shot her a skeptical look, recounting the strange vibe I'd felt radiating off them during movie night. Mira had snuggled up on the couch with us, draping herself across Saul in a way that seemed overly familiar. When I'd questioned it, he'd simply laughed it off. "Oh, come on. We've always been like that. Mira's more like a sister than a cousin, you know?" Something about his words didn't sit right with me. If that was the case, why had I never heard of her before she showed up on our doorstep? And why had he emphasized the cousin connection so strongly? "I just get the sense something isn't adding up," I murmured, leaning closer to Sarah. "What if Mira's story about the stalker ex is a lie?" Sarah's expression softened into one of concern. "Are you sure you're not letting jealousy cloud your judgment here? You've got to trust Saul." Easier said than done, I thought ruefully, because more and more that trust felt like it was slipping through my fingers, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Mira was the one holding the key. The knock at the door was insistent, pulling me from the cozy cocoon of my thoughts. Frowning, I glanced at the clock. It was well past 9 on a Wednesday night. Saul was out at some work event, and Mira, well, who knew where she spent her evenings these days? Abandoning my cup of tea, I padded over to the door and peered through the peephole. A young man stood on the other side, vaguely familiar in a way I couldn't immediately place. Cautiously, I cracked the door open a few inches. "Can I help you?" "Thea? Thea Coleman?" He blinked in surprise, then broke into a wide grin. "It's me, Drew, from the agency?" Realization dawned as I took in his warm, open features. Drew Harris. We'd worked together years ago before I transitioned to my current role at Chapman & Gray. Impulsively, I pulled the door open wider. "Drew, oh my God, it's been ages!" I exclaimed, ushering him inside. "What brings you by?" "I was actually in the neighborhood visiting an old buddy," he explained, settling onto the couch. "We grabbed dinner. He mentioned you and Saul live just a few blocks over." His voice trailed off as his gaze slid past me, focusing on someone else. Spinning, I followed his line of sight to find Mira lingering in the hall doorway, clutching her robe tightly around her slim frame. "Oh, I didn't realize you had company," she murmured, falcon eyes flickering between Drew and I. "I can go back to my room." No. Drew spoke up quickly, startling us both. "Sorry, you just reminded me of someone for a second there." An uneasy silence fell over the room as he regarded her with an indecipherable look. My skin prickled with a sense of disquiet, the awkwardness amplified by Mira's clear discomfort under his scrutiny. Finally, Drew seemed to shake himself from his reverie, huffing out an embarrassed chuckle. "Where are my manners? I'm Drew, an old friend of Thea's, and you are." "Mira," she replied coolly, recovering her composure with unsettling speed. "I'm staying with Thea and Saul for a while." Drew's brows shot upwards at that, gaze swinging back to me questioningly. I could feel the heat staining my cheeks as I rushed to clarify. "Saul's cousin. She's been going through some stuff lately, so we're helping her out." "Right, of course." Something in Drew's tone suggested he didn't buy that explanation for a second. "Well, I should get going. Early meeting in the morning, you know how it is." I walked him to the door, acutely aware of Mira's presence, hovering just out of sight down the hallway. As I turned back from bidding Drew farewell, she was there, eyes narrowed, lips pressed into a thin line. "Thanks for the hospitality, cousin," she said, the slightest hint of venom lacing the last word. A shiver danced down my spine at her venomous tone, though I couldn't fathom what had sparked such open hostility. And just like that, a new sense of unease bloomed. Because suddenly I knew Drew's odd reaction had been born of recognition. He knew Mira, I realized with a start. And whatever their connection, she clearly didn't want me to find out about it. The envelope sat on the kitchen counter, plain and unassuming, but the contents within held the potential to detonate the fragile piece I'd been clinging to for weeks. "You didn't have to do this," Sarah murmured, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. "We could have just confronted them." I shook my head, jaw set. "And given them a chance to lie their way out of it again? No, I need proof before I go making any accusations." Taking a steadying breath, I tore open the envelope and pulled out the file within. Photos, documents, a detailed report, all methodically compiled by the private investigator I'd hired weeks ago when my suspicions first took root. Page by page, the truth was laid bare in damning clarity. Mira wasn't Sol's cousin at all. The two had been carrying on an affair for over a year, using her fake stalker story as a convenient excuse to move her into our home. Every tender look, every lingering touch, evidence of a deception so brazen it stole the air from my lungs. "Oh, Thea?" Sarah breathed, hand flying to her mouth as she scanned the documents. Fury blazed through me, scalding and all-consuming. How could he? How dare he? After everything we'd built, the life and future we'd promised each other, Sol had sacrificed it all for what? A cheap thrill with some younger, vapid thing? The tremors started then, racking my body until the file slipped from my numb fingers and scattered across the tile. Tears burned hot trails down my cheeks as the truth I'd been desperately avoiding finally crushed me under its weight. Betrayal, lies, deceit. They'd invited her into our home, into our lives, woven an intricate web of lies to disguise their indiscretions as something so simple as family obligation, all while disgracing everything we stood for behind closed doors. Sarah's arms enveloped me, gentle shushes filling my ears as I crumbled against her. For long moments, I simply broke, surrendering to the maelstrom of hurt and disbelief ravaging my heart. But just as that storm reached its crescendo, a strange sort of calm washed over me. Because in that moment, the path forward revealed itself with crystal clarity. I couldn't confront them, not directly at least. That would just open the door for more lies, more manipulation. No, if I wanted to extract my pound of flesh, I would need to keep my rage buried deep. Tend to it quietly, like Akem building strength for the inferno still to come. Let them believe their secrets were safe, their deceptions successful. Let them grow comfortable, arrogant in their supposed victory. Then, when they least expected it, I would detonate the truth in spectacular fashion, and revel in the ashes of the lives they'd so carelessly burned to the ground. This was my home they'd violated, my heart they'd shattered into cutting shards of shattered glass. And by God, I would make them bleed for it. The days blurred together in a haze of calculated deception after that fateful discovery. I moved through our home like a ghost, all traces of warmth and familiarity leached away by the lies that had tainted its very foundations. Mira didn't seem to notice my distance, too absorbed in the elaborate fantasy she and Sol were spinning. And Sol? He basked in the audacity of his own treachery, completely unaware of the reckoning I was meticulously assembling, piece by damning piece. It started small, an anonymous tip regarding irregularities in one of the startups Sol consulted for. Just enough to prompt a cursory audit into their financial records. From there, the trail of breadcrumbs only escalated, implicating him in a money laundering scheme to funnel investor capital into unauthorized projects. "It has to be a mistake," he insisted one night over takeout, brow furrowed in concern. I simply nodded, feigning the same confusion as Mira looked on with disinterested eyes. When the investigation inevitably ballooned, Sol would have no choice but to cooperate, give them access to his personal accounts, lay bare every sordid detail of the funds he'd been skimming these past years. It would destroy him professionally, but that was only the opening salvo. No, my true strike would come from another angle entirely. and with Mira as the incendiary device. I'd taken notice of her expensive tastes, the covetous way her gaze would linger on artwork or jewelry she couldn't afford on her receptionist's salary. A weakness I fully intended to exploit. So I planted the seed, an innocuous flyer about exclusive cryptocurrency investment opportunities. Then I sat back and watched as her greed blossomed into obsession, hours spent glued to her laptop researching the too-good-to-be-true pitch. Every question, every concern, I was there with a crafted response to push her deeper down the rabbit hole. Of course, there was no real money to be made. It was all an elaborate fiction, leading her on a digital trail directly into illegally solicited funds. Securities fraud on a massive scale, with her unwitting participation smeared all over the evidence. It was the perfect snare. She'd think she hit it big, only to have the floor crumble out from underneath her. And with Sol already ensnared in his own financial crimes, they'd have nowhere to run, no one to turn to for help. Except, perhaps, the wife they'd so carelessly deceived. I could already envision that glorious moment of revelation. Picture the slick sheen of panic cracking their arrogant veneers as the consequences crashed down in a turbulent swell, sweeping away any possible escape. The very thought fueled me through those harrowing days, providing the strength to maintain my facade, to smile blandly and assure them everything would work out, right up until the moment I snatched away those reassuring lies for good. They'd taken everything from me with their deceptions, so I would take everything in return, leaving them with only the scorched remains of all they'd so foolishly destroyed. The air was thick with tension as the legal team from Sol's firm filed into our living room. His expression was pinched with worry, eyes haunted in a way I'd never seen before. Beside him, Mira radiated forced calm, but I caught the flicker of uncertainty in her gaze as it met mine. "I don't understand," Sol began, voice strained. "The audit findings make no sense. There has to be some mistake." "I'm afraid the evidence is quite clear, Mr. Mirren," the senior associate cut him off, tone clipped. "Funds have been systematically siphoned from investor accounts into unauthorized holdings over the past 2 years. Holdings that trace directly back to you." Mira's sharp inhalation was the only sound in the sudden, suffocating silence. I watched impassively as the truth they'd fought so hard to bury finally breached the surface in spectacular fashion. That's impossible," Sol sputtered, turning to me with wide, pleading eyes. "Thea, you know I'd never." "Don't," I stated flatly, holding up a hand to silence him. "Don't insult me with more lies, Sol, not after everything you've done." For the first time since this nightmare began, something like genuine fear flickered across his features. My heart twisted with a vicious sense of satisfaction. Good. Let him know how it feels to have the ground swallowed from beneath his feet. The legal proceedings after that were almost anticlimactic. Sol dismissed from the firm, assets frozen pending criminal charges. Through it all, Mira remained conspicuously silent, her mask of composure slipping only when she thought no one was watching. It was almost funny, really. She had no idea her turn was still to come. The phone calls started a few days later. Overseas investors demanding updates on the private cryptocurrency opportunity she'd bought into. At first, I could see the confusion wrinkling her brow as she tried to deflect their frantic inquiries. But as the details emerged, that confusion morphed into outright panic. The whole thing had been a front, a fabricated long con to launder illicit funds through her accounts. And she'd fallen for it hook, line, and sinker, dragging herself into the very center of a massive fraud investigation. "How could you do this?" Her voice trembled with a potent mixture of fear and fury as she finally confronted me, eyes wild. I simply stared back, unmoved by her desperate pleas for understanding. "You want to know how?" I stated softly, each word dripping with icy venom. "You came into my home and helped destroy my life with your lies and deceptions. This," I gestured vaguely at the chaos rapidly unraveling around us. "This is just karma, Mira, the universe restoring balance." I watched, utterly devoid of pity, as the weight of her predicament crushed the last flickers of defiance in her eyes. Because as satisfying as it was to see Sol face the consequences of his actions, there was something even sweeter about witnessing Mira's world implode from the very greed that made her such an easy mark. They'd schemed and plotted, so convinced of their own superiority. Never could they have fathomed the depths of my determination to make them pay for each and every sin. But now, finally, the truth had set them free, free falling into the devastation of the lives they'd so recklessly destroyed. And I was going to savor every agonizing second of their descent. The sleek lines of the conference room offered little in the way of warmth or comfort as I strode inside, back ramrod straight. This was the moment I'd been meticulously architecting for months, the final reckoning. Saul and Mira were already present, each flanked by their respective legal counsel. Their expressions were studiously blank, though I could see the faint tremors of tension in Mira's hands as she clutched her briefing folder like a lifeline. As I took my seat across from them, Saul finally broke the heavy silence. "Thea, I don't know what's happening, but this has all gone too far. Whatever you think I've done, I swear I can explain." "Save it," I cut him off, ice clinging to every syllable. "I'm done listening to your lies and excuses. All I want to hear from you now is how much this little charade is going to cost." Mira jerked slightly at my words, the first crack in her carefully curated mask of indifference. Good. Let her feel the tremors. It was a preview of the seismic upheaval still to come. "Miss Coleman," her lawyer interjected smoothly, "perhaps if you'd clarify the allegations. My client has been relatively insulated from the unpleasantness surrounding Mr. Mirren's legal troubles." A tight, humorless smile tugged at my lips. "Of course she has. But then, Mira always did have a gift for willful ignorance when it suited her needs, didn't she?" I could feel the temperature in the room plummet as realization bloomed in her widened eyes. Slowly, jerkily, she turned to face Saul, an entire conversation passing between them in a matter of seconds without a word being uttered. Whatever she saw in his crumpled countenance was answer enough. "You knew?" she hissed, voice dripping with venom. "All this time you knew she was onto us, and you said nothing?" Saul's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. I thought if I could just explain things to Thea, make her understand how we fell in love." The shrill peal of Mira's laughter sliced through his feeble protests. "Is that what you think this was? Love?" She sneered the word like a profanity. "God, you really are just a love-struck little puppy, aren't you? This was never about love, Saul. This was about the money, the life I wanted, that you were too weak to just take for yourself." Her tirade hit a fever pitch, the cracks in her facade splintering wide open as every oily truth came oozing out in lurid detail. I sat in silent witness as Mira flayed away Saul's illusions with each blistering word, exposing him as the pathetic, spineless fool he was. When the dust finally settled, their entire charade lay in smoldering ruins between us. Mira's eyes, those cold, dead things, finally swung back to bore into me. "So this is it, then?" she rasped. "You get your pathetic little revenge, and Saul and I get, what, jail time? Financial ruin?" My chin lifted a fraction, holding her gaze in an unwavering challenge. "Not just that. Infamy. By the time I'm done, everyone from our inner circle to the blogger pariahs will know exactly what kind of depraved, vile snakes you truly are." She flinched as if I'd struck her. Good. Let her fear the total and complete destruction of whatever tattered remains of reputation she clung to. Let them both understand that this went far beyond money or misbegotten pride. What they'd done, the unforgivable betrayal and deceit, had burned away any possibility of walking away unscathed. They had doused the bridge connecting us in gasoline, then willfully tossed the match. And as the smoke finally cleared, all that remained was ash, and the inescapable consequences they'd brought crashing down upon themselves. The soft clink of champagne flutes mingled with the low murmur of appreciation as I moved through the crowd gathered at my new gallery's opening night. Collectors, critics, industry insiders, all drinking in the vibrant celebration of art and culture that had risen from the ashes of my former life. "To Thea," Sarah's voice rang out, equal parts pride and admiration, "for having the courage to take those lemons and open up one hell of a lemonade stand." Laughter rippled through the assembled guests as I accepted their warm accolades with a gracious smile. On the surface, I was the picture of poise, a woman reborn from the crucible of personal turmoil into something sleeker, sharper, stronger. No one would ever suspect the white-hot crucible of fury still banked behind my eyes. The gallery had been my ultimate revenge in many ways, Not just the business success built from the scattered remains of my divorce settlement, but a living rebuke to the wasteful lies and hollow ambitions that had fueled Saul and Mira's downfalls. While they scraped for whatever shreds of redemption remained after the brutal public reckoning, I had carefully curated an entirely new identity, forged from shattered trust, but tempered by an unshakable resilience. It's incredible what you've built here. A familiar voice pulled me from my reverie. I turned to find Drew beside me, admiring the soaring installation dominating the main exhibition space. His warm hazel eyes sparkled with appreciation and something deeper, something that made my pulse quicken traitorously. "I'm glad you could make it," I replied, willing myself to remain composed under his openly admiring gaze. "I know these sort of events aren't usually your scene." Drew chuckled, running a hand through his tousled hair. "What can I say? I'm a sucker for a strong woman who knows how to thrive after getting knocked down." The weighted words hung between us, unvoiced understanding crackling in the stillness. Of course he knew. He'd been the one to first glimpse the mask Mira wore so convincingly, all those months ago. I'd never told him the full, sordid tale, but Drew wasn't an idiot. One look at the shattered remains of my marriage had been enough for him to read between the lines and arrive at the brutal truth. There was a reason he'd always been one of the few I trusted implicitly, even when the world seemed determined to strip me of that faith in humanity. "You know," he began, voice lowering conspiratorially, "I heard through the grapevine that a certain former startup mogul is struggling to land funding for his new venture capital project." My brows arched in mock surprise. "Is that so?" A wry smile played across Drew's lips. "Reputation's a bitch like that sometimes, I guess." The reminder of Soul's professional purgatory sparked a flicker of dark satisfaction. After everything, it was no less than that self-serving snake deserved. "Well," I murmured, allowing my gaze to linger on Drew a beat too long, "I certainly won't be losing any sleep over it." His answering laugh was rich and warm, the sound curling through my senses in a way I hadn't allowed myself to feel in, well, longer than I cared to admit. For one fleeting moment, I was acutely aware of the effortless chemistry still simmering between us, the unspoken possibilities it hinted at. But the moment passed, as it inevitably did these days. Because no matter how far I'd come, no matter how brightly my new life burned, a part of me would always remain tempered by the crucible that had forged this renaissance. The hard-won wisdom of knowing that even love, true love, could be unmade by the insidious rot of lies and betrayal. In that way, I supposed Saul and Mira's actions had been a perverse blessing in disguise. Painful and severe, yes, but also permanent inoculation against the weakness of blind trust. I was stronger for having risen from their ashes, stronger, and so very much wiser. Because in the end, I had reclaimed the only thing that truly mattered, myself. And I would never relinquish that power again. I stared numbly at my phone, rereading Colin's text messages to a woman named Elise. The flirtatious banter, the pet names, the explicit details. It was all there, an undeniable confirmation of his betrayal. My heart pounded and waves of nausea washed over me. How could the man I'd loved and trusted for a decade do this to me, to our marriage? Memories flooded back. Colin's recent late nights at the office, his evasive answers when I asked about his work, the strange charges on our credit card statements. I should have trusted my instincts sooner, but I'd stubbornly clung to the belief that my husband was still the man I fell in love with. Anger simmered beneath the surface, tempered by a strange sense of calm determination. I wouldn't confront him now, not while emotions ran high. I needed a plan, evidence to back up my case. Colin couldn't just sweep this under the rug. The next few weeks were a blur of covert investigation. I scoured our bank statements, documenting every suspicious transaction. I discreetly reached out to Darcy, my old coworker from Colin's company, who reluctantly confirmed the rumors about his dalliances with a young intern. Armed with a solid paper trail and witness accounts, I steeled myself for the confrontation. When Colin announced a sudden business trip, I knew it was my chance to catch him red-handed. As expected, a quick call to the conference organizers revealed he wasn't registered. The pieces fell into place. He was using the trip as a cover to meet up with his mistress. When Colin returned home, I greeted him with a grim smile, laying out the evidence before him. text transcripts, bank statements, witness testimonies. His eyes widened in shock, and his face flushed crimson as the weight of his deceit sank in. The weeks following the confrontation were excruciating. Colin refused to leave our home, insisting we could work through this mistake. His pleas for forgiveness rang hollow as the depths of his betrayal became clearer. "It was just a fling, Arya," he claimed, his eyes pleading. "A moment of weakness. You know I love you," I scoffed, shoving the damning evidence in his face. "Plane tickets to Cancun? Hundreds of dollars on lingerie from Victoria's Secret? This wasn't a fling. This was a full-blown affair." His expression hardened. "You've been spying on me? Going through my things? Don't you dare play the victim here." I spat. "I had to investigate because you've been lying to my face for months." Colin slumped onto the couch, head in his hands. "I'm so sorry, Arya. I never meant to hurt you." Hurt me? His betrayal had shattered my world, crumbling the trust and bond we'd built over a decade of marriage. How could I ever look at him the same way? As the days dragged on, Colin's pleas grew more desperate, punctuated by tearful apologies and empty promises. "I'll change," he'd vow. "Just give me another chance." But I knew the truth. Once that line was crossed, there was no going back. The man I loved was gone, replaced by a selfish, deceitful stranger. My resolve hardened as I consulted divorce lawyers, gathering documentation of Colin's infidelity and financial misconduct. I may have been blindsided, but I wouldn't be a victim. Meanwhile, Darcy continued feeding me inside information about Colin's dalliances at work. Apparently, his affair with Elise was an open secret, the subject of snickers and gossip around the office. "That shameless hussy was all over him at the holiday party," Darcy confided. "Everyone knew something was going on." I felt a pang of anger towards this Elise. She wasn't some naive, love-struck girl. She was a conniving homewrecker who had willingly helped destroy my marriage. With each new revelation, the man I had once loved became more unrecognizable. The Colin I knew would never have risked his career, his reputation, our life together, for a cheap thrill. As I pored over the sordid details, something shifted inside me. The hurt and betrayal transformed into a simmering anger, a hunger for justice and retaliation. If Colin was so eager to discard our vows, I would make sure he faced the consequences. With Colin's deceit laid bare, I felt a newfound sense of determination. If he thought he could just sweep his infidelity under the rug and beg for forgiveness, he was sorely mistaken. I would make him pay for every lie, every betrayal. Channeling my anger into action, I scoured our joint accounts and credit card statements, meticulously documenting every suspicious charge and cash withdrawal. Plane tickets, hotel stays, pricey gifts, the evidence of his duplicity mounted with each uncovered transaction. Darcy became my ally in this quest, feeding me insider details about Colin's shameless dalliances with Elise at the office. They'd sneak off for lunch meetings that lasted hours. She confided with a sneer. It was so blatant, we all knew what was going on. Armed with this knowledge, I decided to confront Elise directly. If she thought she could seduce my husband and destroy my marriage without consequences, she had another thing coming. I tracked down her address and showed up unannounced at her door, leveling her with a steely glare. "So, you're the homewrecker who's been screwing my husband." Elise's eyes widened in shock, but she quickly regained her composure, a smug smile spreading across her face. "Colin and I are in love. He's going to leave his frigid wife for me." I fought back a bitter laugh. The naivety of this girl was almost pitiable. "Is that what he told you? That he'd leave me and his whole life behind for you?" Her bravado faltered, and I could see the doubt creeping in. With a twisted sense of satisfaction, I shoved the evidence in her face. Phone records, credit card bills, everything proving the sordid depths of their affair. "He's been lying to us both," I stated flatly. "I'm going to make sure you two face the consequences for your actions." Elise's cocky veneer crumbled as the reality of the situation hit her. Hot, angry tears sprang to her eyes as she realized she was just another notch on Colin's belt, a passing thrill to be discarded when the excitement waned. As I left her apartment, I felt a grim sense of vindication. The game was up. I had all the ammunition I needed to bring Colin's house of lies crashing down. Back home, I could sense Colin's unease as I continued gathering documentation. He knew I was up to something, but his meek inquiries were met with stony silence. Finally, I laid it all out. Every last piece of proof of his indiscretions, his wanton disregard for our vows and my trust. "What is all this?" he asked, feigning confusion. "The evidence of your lies and betrayal," I replied evenly. "I'm taking you to the cleaners, Colin. You're going to lose everything." For once, my husband was speechless, his bravado shattered by the cold, hard reality I had assembled. The shock and fear in his eyes filled me with a perverse sense of satisfaction. The scales of justice were finally tipping in my favor. With the evidence stacked against him, Colin's denials grew increasingly feeble. I could see the fear in his eyes as I methodically laid out my case. The proof of his affair, the misuse of our finances, the blatant lies. "This is all a misunderstanding," he pleaded, voice trembling. "I never meant to hurt you, Arya." I let out a derisive snort. "Save it, Colin. I'm done listening to your excuses." Realizing I wouldn't be swayed, he switched tactics, trying to appeal to the memories of our happier times together. "Think about everything we've been through, everything we've built," he urged, reaching for my hand. "Are you really going to throw it all away over a mistake?" I recoiled from his touch, disgusted. "A mistake? You've been carrying on an affair for months, lying to my face every single day." Anger simmered in my voice as I jabbed a finger at the documented evidence. "The hotel receipts, the lingerie charges, the secret rendezvous with your little office fling, that's not a mistake, Colin. That's a calculated pattern of deceit and betrayal." His shoulders slumped in defeat. But I wasn't finished. "You need to face the facts. Our marriage is over. The only thing left is making sure you face the consequences for destroying my trust, for trampling on everything we once had." With that, I revealed my next move, consulting with a high-powered divorce attorney to ensure I received my fair share of our assets. Colin's eyes widened in shock and panic as I laid out the potential division of our finances, properties, and investments. "You can't do this to me," he sputtered, indignant. "After everything I've done for you, for this family?" I laughed bitterly at his audacity. "You've done this to yourself, Colin. I gave you my trust, my love, and you threw it all away for some cheap fling. Now it's time to face the consequences." His mask of contrition shifted, twisting into an ugly sneer. "You cold, vindictive bitch," he spat. "I'll fight you every step of the way. You won't get a damn thing from me." I met his venom with an icy calm. "Go ahead and fight me, Colin. With all the evidence I have, the courts will side with the wronged wife whose husband flagrantly violated his vows and company policies." That last part seemed to give him pause. In his hubris, he had clearly underestimated the extent of my knowledge about his misdeeds, not just the personal betrayal, but the professional misconduct of using company resources to facilitate his tawdry affair. As realization dawned in his eyes, I could see the fight draining from him, replaced by simmering dread. He knew I had him boxed into a corner, with no avenue for escape. Reveling in my newfound power, I drove the point home. "I hope she was worth it, Colin, because by the time I'm through with you, you'll have lost everything, your job, your reputation, your cushy lifestyle. All that'll be left are the ashes of the life you selfishly burned to the ground." With the gauntlet thrown down, Colin tried to maintain an air of nonchalance, but I could see the cracks in his facade. His usual cockiness had diminished, replaced by nervous glances and evasive body language whenever I entered the room. Still, I refused to let my guard down. I knew better than to underestimate his capacity for deception after everything that had transpired. A few days later, he announced he would be going on an overnight business trip to attend some corporate conference. Alarm bells rang in my head. This was highly unusual for his role. "What conference is this exactly?" I asked, feigning casual curiosity. Colin rattled off some vague details about team building and leadership training, avoiding eye contact. A blatant lie, no doubt. I waited until he had left before springing into action. A few quick calls to the conference organizers confirmed my suspicions. Colin's name wasn't on any attendance list. White-hot anger surged through me as the realization hit. He was using this fake trip as a cover to rendezvous with his mistress, likely thinking I was foolish enough to fall for his lies again. Not this time. This pathetic charade would be his undoing. I began meticulously documenting his absence, taking time-stamped photos and videos to prove he wasn't where he claimed to be. Every deceptive text message, every missed call, it all became part of the dossier I was assembling. The icing on the cake came when I tracked down the hotel where he was staying through his credit card records. With a few terse words to the front desk staff about a family emergency, I gained access to the security footage. There he was, bold as brass, arriving hand in hand with a scantily clad Elise, the two of them giggling and canoodling like love-struck teenagers. I felt bile rise in my throat watching the shameless display, but I maintained my composure, preserving the video for the grand unveiling. When Colin finally returned home, I was ready. As soon as he stepped through the door, I blindsided him with photos and video stills documenting his sordid tryst. "What is this?" he sputtered, face paling. "Proof of your lies," I spat. "Did you really think I'd be stupid enough to buy your pathetic business trip excuse?" Trapped, Colin reverted to his usual tactics, indignant denials followed by groveling pleas for forgiveness. But I was done listening to his empty words. I wanted him to face the consequences of his actions, to feel the full weight of the humiliation and devastation he had inflicted on me. With a few taps on my phone, I had emailed evidence of his affair to his entire office, human resources, senior management, everyone. Let them witness his despicable conduct firsthand. Checkmate, Colin. Your professional life is about to crumble, just like you destroyed our marriage. Colin's face drained of color as the realization of what I'd done sank in. His phone began buzzing incessantly, no doubt a barrage of inquiries from his colleagues about the incriminating evidence now flooding their inboxes. "You crazy bitch," he roared, fury contorting his features. "What have you done?" I met his rage with icy calm. "I'm just ensuring you face the consequences for your reprehensible actions. Did you really think you could carry on this sordid affair without any repercussions?" His eyes darted wildly as he scrambled for his laptop, desperately trying to control the damage. But I had already released the Kraken. Those lurid videos and text transcripts were making their way through the corporate grapevine like wildfire. "Please, Arya, you have to stop this," he begged, a note of panic creeping into his voice. "My career, my reputation. Should have thought about that before you decided to throw it all away for a cheap fling," I countered, unmoved by his pleas. "Did you think there wouldn't be consequences for your lies and betrayal?" Colin's mask of contrition promptly shattered, his indignation reigniting. "You'll pay for this," he snarled. "I'll make sure you get nothing in the divorce. You hear me? Nothing." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Even now, after being caught red-handed, he was more concerned about his money and status than the emotional devastation he'd inflicted. "Save your empty threats," I shot back. "With all the evidence piling up, the courts will side with the wronged wife whose husband flagrantly violated his vows and corporate ethics policies." As if on cue, Colin's phone started ringing again, a call from his boss, no doubt. He stormed off to take it, but the raised voices and profanity drifting from the other room spoke volumes. When he finally emerged, his face was pale and drawn, awash in cold sweat. The arrogant bluster was gone, replaced by a hunted look. "Well," I prodded, "what did they have to say about your extracurricular activities?" Colin slumped into a chair, head in his hands. "I'm suspended, pending an investigation. They're taking this really seriously." I couldn't resist twisting the knife. "Of course they are. Can't have a senior executive flagrantly misusing company resources to carry on an affair, now can they? That's a major breach of ethics policies." As the gravity of his situation sank in, Colin's eyes took on a hollow, defeated look. "I've ruined everything, haven't I?" he mumbled hollowly. For a fleeting moment, a tremor of pity rippled through me. This broken, shattered man was barely recognizable as the arrogant philanderer who had so callously trampled on our marital vows just weeks ago. But the moment passed as quickly as it came. He had made his bed, and now he would lie in it, a well-deserved purgatory of his own making. "Yes, Colin," I stated flatly. "You've ruined everything, and you have no one to blame but yourself." In the days following Colin's suspension, an eerie pall hung over our home. The man who had once strutted around with such arrogant confidence was now a hollow, haunted shell. I took a perverse satisfaction in watching his world unravel before my eyes. This was the price he paid for his selfish betrayal, the loss of his career, his status, his ill-gotten trappings of success. The final nail in Colin's professional coffin came when Elise, perhaps sensing the shifting winds, decided to turn on him as well. A flurry of emails from her flooded his work inbox, providing even more lurid details and evidence of their tawdry affair. "That little snake!" Colin raged when he discovered her betrayal, hurling his laptop across the room in a fit of impotent fury. After everything I promised her, I couldn't stifle a mocking laugh at his indignation. "What, you thought she was in it for more than just a cheap thrill? That she actually cared about your empty promises to leave me?" His eyes smoldered with hatred, but I pressed on, twisting the knife. "Face it, Colin. You're just a sad, pathetic cheater who got played by the very same woman you used as a plaything. You deserve every ounce of misery coming your way." To his credit, Colin didn't try denying the truth of my words. He simply shook his head, shoulders sagging in defeat. In that moment, I almost pitied the broken wreck before me. Almost. The final blows rained down in rapid succession after that. A scathing letter from the company's legal team, citing the mountain of evidence against him and demanding his immediate resignation to avoid a protracted dismissal process. Then came the notifications from our joint bank accounts and credit cards, everything frozen pending the division of assets in the divorce proceedings. With each new hammer blow, I could see Colin aging before my eyes. The arrogant swagger replaced by the hunched, shambling gait of a man utterly defeated. His desperate pleas for mercy fell on deaf ears. I was beyond appeasing at this point. The pièce de résistance arrived in the form of a tersely worded letter from Elise herself, detailing the lurid particulars of their affair in excruciatingly sordid detail. I made sure to leave it out for Colin to find, reveling in his anguished howls of despair when he realized I had seen it all. In a final act of masochistic self-destruction, he turned to the bottle, spending his days in a drunken stupor, railing about the unfairness of his plight. I watched in stony silence, unmoved, as he unraveled into a gibbering, self-pitying wreck. This, I knew, was the truest form of justice. To watch the man who had so callously shattered my world brought to his knees, forced to confront the consequences of his selfish actions. As our assets dwindled and his reputation crumbled to dust, I felt a grim sense of vindication wash over me. The debt had been paid. The scales were balanced once more. The weeks after Colin's ousting from the company passed in a blur. Our once luxurious home felt eerily empty, devoid of the trappings of our former life of excess. As part of the divorce settlement, we were forced to liquidate many of our assets: the sports cars, the designer wardrobe, the lavish furnishings he had acquired to soothe his ego. It was oddly cathartic, watching the material idols he had valued above our marriage get carted away, piece by piece. Colin himself had become a ghost, drifting through the house in a perpetual haze of self-pity and alcohol fumes. He had lost everything: his prestigious job, his status, even the mistress who had so eagerly enabled his downfall. A small part of me felt a twinge of sadness watching this once vibrant man wither away into a broken shell. But that fleeting pang of empathy was quickly overshadowed by the overwhelming sense of liberation I felt. For too long, I had allowed myself to be defined by Colin's success, content to bask in the glow of his wealth and status. But now, unshackled from the gilded cage of our so-called perfect life, I was free to rediscover my own passions and identity. I found solace in my art again, that once cherished creative outlet I had neglected for far too long. As the divorce proceedings crawled on, I would spend hours in my studio, pouring my emotions onto the canvas in a riot of color and texture. With every brushstroke, I could feel the weight of Colin's betrayal slowly lifting from my shoulders. The bitterness and anger that had fueled my quest for vengeance gave way to a profound sense of peace and acceptance. In the end, Colin got what he deserved. The court sided squarely with the wronged wife, awarding me a substantial share of our marital assets. Not that the money mattered much to me anymore. I had gained something far more valuable than any material possession: my freedom, my self-worth, my life back. As the divorce papers were finalized and Colin's pathetic form slunk out of my life for good, I felt an unfamiliar sense of lightness, as if a great weight had been lifted from my soul. No more lies, no more betrayal, just the beautiful, terrifying uncertainty of the open road ahead of me. In that moment, staring out at the infinite possibilities of my new life, I realized something profound. Colin's transgressions, as painful as they were, had ultimately been a blessing in disguise. They had shocked me out of my complacent existence and forced me to confront the harsh truths I had been willfully ignoring for years. As I looked back on the wreckage of our marriage, I felt no bitterness or regret, only gratitude for the lessons I had learned. I was no longer the meek, subservient woman who had allowed her identity to be subsumed by her husband's ego. I was reborn, tempered in the fires of pain and betrayal, into a strong, self-assured woman who knew her worth. With a serene smile, I turned away from the past and focused on the future stretching out before me, ripe with endless potential. Colin's sad, sordid tale was over, but mine, my real story, was just beginning. I never thought I'd be standing at my father's funeral alone while my husband was off gallivanting with his mistress. Just a few short years ago, life seemed perfect. Liam and I met through my father, who was his mentor at work. Dad always spoke highly of Liam, praising his intelligence and work ethic. When Liam asked me out, I was thrilled. Our courtship was a whirlwind of romantic dinners, long walks in the park, and endless conversations about our hopes and dreams. We married within a year, and my father couldn't have been happier. He loved Liam like a son and was overjoyed to see us build a life together. But then, everything changed. Dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and given just 3 months to live. I was devastated, but I expected Liam to be my rock, to support me through this difficult time. Instead, he grew distant and cold. He started staying late at work, claiming he had important projects to finish. When I begged him to visit Dad with me, he always had an excuse. "I'm too busy," he'd say, his eyes glued to his phone as he typed out another text. I confided in my best friend Olivia about my marital problems. She listened patiently as I poured out my heart, tears streaming down my face. "I don't know what to do," I sobbed. "Liam is like a different person. He's so selfish and uncaring. It's like he doesn't even love me anymore." Olivia hugged me tightly. "I'm so sorry, Evelyn. You don't deserve this. Have you tried talking to him about how you feel?" I nodded miserably. "Every time I bring it up, he just shuts me down. He says I'm being too emotional, that I need to focus on my job and stop relying on him so much. He even had the nerve to complain about my salary as a teacher, saying I don't contribute enough to our household finances." Olivia's eyes flashed with anger. "That's awful, Evelyn. He has no right to treat you that way, especially not now." Despite my best efforts, Liam remained unmoved. When Dad started an experimental treatment, I hoped it might buy us more time together. I visited him alone, praying that Liam would have a change of heart, and for a brief moment, it seemed like he did. He agreed to visit Dad with me just once. But the entire time, he was glued to his phone, texting someone with a smirk on his face. He barely said 2 words to Dad, who looked so frail and weak in his hospital bed. A few days later, I received the call I'd been dreading. Dad had taken a turn for the worse. I rushed to the hospital, my heart pounding in my chest, but it was too late. He was gone before I arrived, leaving me heartbroken and alone. When I called Liam to tell him the news, he barely reacted. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said flatly, "but I can't make it to the funeral. I have a business trip." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My father, the man who had been like a second dad to him, was dead, and all he could think about was work. But the final blow came when I was leaving for the funeral. Liam pressed a single dollar bill into my hand, a smirk on his face. "For the funeral expenses," he said, before walking away. I stood there, stunned, the crumpled bill in my hand. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I knew I could never forgive him for this ultimate betrayal, and I knew that somehow, some way, I would make him pay. As I stood at my father's graveside, the weight of my grief was almost unbearable. The only thing that kept me standing was the burning anger I felt towards Liam. How could he abandon me like this, in my darkest hour? How could he be so callous, so unfeeling? I barely registered the condolences of the other mourners, their words washing over me like a distant tide. All I could think about was the way Liam had treated me, the way he had betrayed my father's memory. I clutched the single dollar bill he had given me, my fingers trembling with rage. After the funeral, I returned home to an empty house. Liam was still away on his business trip, and I couldn't bear the thought of being alone with my thoughts. I called Olivia, my voice shaking as I asked her to come over. When she arrived, I collapsed into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. "I can't do this anymore," I choked out. "I can't be married to a man who treats me like this." Olivia rubbed my back soothingly. "I know, honey. I'm so sorry you're going through this, but you're not alone. I'm here for you, no matter what." We sat together on the couch, sipping tea and talking for hours. Olivia listened patiently as I poured out my heart, my anger and grief spilling out in equal measure. "I just don't understand how he could be so cruel," I said. "My father loved him like a son, and this is how he repays him?" Olivia's eyes narrowed. "You know, Evelyn, I've been thinking. What if there's more to this than meets the eye? What if Liam is hiding something from you?" I frowned. "Like what?" "Like an affair," Olivia said bluntly. "It would explain why he's been so distant, why he's always on his phone, and why he didn't want to visit your dad in the hospital." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. An affair? Could it be true? I thought back to all the late nights at work, the secretive texts, the way Liam had pulled away from me. It all started to make a twisted kind of sense. "But how can I know for sure?" I asked, my voice trembling. Olivia leaned forward, her eyes glinting with determination. "We hire a private investigator. We find out the truth once and for all, and then we make him pay for what he's done to you." I hesitated for a moment, my mind reeling. Did I really want to go down this path? Did I want to stoop to Liam's level to seek revenge? But then I thought of my father, of the way Liam had betrayed him. And I knew that I had no choice. "Okay," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Let's do it." The next few weeks passed in a blur. Olivia and I met with the private investigator, a grizzled ex-cop named Jack. He listened to my story with a sympathetic ear, his eyes hardening as I described Liam's behavior. "Don't worry, Mrs. Thompson," he said. "We'll get to the bottom of this, and if your husband is cheating on you, we'll catch him red-handed." I tried to go about my life as normally as possible, but it was hard. Every time Liam walked through the door, I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. I couldn't look him in the eye, couldn't bear to be in the same room as him. And still, he seemed oblivious to my pain, lost in his own selfish world. 2 months after my father's funeral, Jack called me with the news I had been dreading. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, his voice grave, "we have evidence that your husband is having an affair with a coworker named Sophia. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but I thought you should know." I felt like the ground had dropped out from under me. So it was true. Liam had betrayed me in the worst possible way. And now I knew what I had to do. I had to make him pay for what he had done. I had to destroy him, just as he had destroyed me. The evidence of Liam's affair felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything but the betrayal that had shattered my world. I went through the motions of my daily life, teaching my classes and grading papers, but inside I was a wreck. Liam, on the other hand, seemed completely unfazed. He continued to stay late at work, to spend hours on his phone texting God knows who. When he was home, he was distant and irritable, snapping at me over the smallest things. One evening, as we sat in stony silence at the dinner table, Liam finally spoke. "You know, Evelyn, I've been thinking. Maybe it's time for you to quit your job and stay home full-time. It's not like you're contributing much to our finances anyway." I stared at him in disbelief. "Excuse me. I'm a teacher, Liam. I'm shaping young minds, making a difference in the world, and in case you've forgotten, my salary helps pay our bills." Liam snorted. "Please, you're barely making a dent. I'm the one bringing home the big bucks here, and frankly, I'm tired of coming home to a messy house and a wife who's too exhausted to take care of my needs." I felt my blood boil. "Your needs? What about my needs, Liam? What about the fact that I'm grieving the loss of my father and you can't even be bothered to support me? What about the fact that you're cheating on me with some bimbo from work?" Liam's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" I laughed bitterly. "Don't play dumb with me, Liam. I know all about your little fling with Sophia. I have proof." For a moment, Liam looked stunned. Then his face hardened. "You've been spying on me? How dare you?" "How dare I?" I shouted, rising to my feet. "How dare you betray me like this? How dare you disrespect my father's memory and our marriage vows? You're a selfish, lying bastard, and I'm done with you." Liam stood up too, his face twisted with rage. "You're done with me? Fine, But don't expect a penny from me in the divorce. I'll make sure you end up with nothing. I laughed again, a harsh, ugly sound. You think I care about your money, Liam? You think that's what this is about? I loved you, you son of a bitch. I trusted you, and you threw it all away for some cheap thrill. Liam grabbed his coat and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. I sank back into my chair, my body shaking with anger and grief. I knew then that there was no going back. My marriage was over, and the man I had once loved was dead to me. The next day, I called Olivia and told her everything. She listened in silence, her face growing darker with each revelation. When I finished, she took my hand and squeezed it tightly. Evelyn, I'm so sorry. I can't imagine how much pain you must be in right now. But you're not alone in this. I'm here for you, and I'll support you every step of the way. I nodded, blinking back tears. I know, Liv, and I'm grateful for that. But I need more than just support right now. I need revenge. Olivia's eyes widened. Revenge? What do you mean? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to say. I want to destroy Liam. Liv, I want to ruin his life just like he ruined mine. I want to take everything from him and leave him with nothing. Olivia was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Okay, if that's what you need to do, then I'm with you. But we have to be smart about this, Evelyn. We can't just go off half-cocked. I nodded, a grim smile spreading across my face. Oh, don't worry. I have a plan, and by the time I'm done, Liam will wish he had never met me. The next few weeks were a blur of hospital visits and hushed conversations with doctors. Dad's experimental treatment had started, but it was taking a toll on his already weakened body. He was in constant pain, and the medication made him groggy and disoriented. I spent every spare moment by his bedside, holding his hand and trying to keep his spirits up. Liam, on the other hand, was nowhere to be seen. He always had an excuse for why he couldn't come to the hospital. A big project at work, a client meeting, a networking event. It was like he couldn't be bothered to support me or my father in our time of need. One evening, as I sat by Dad's bedside, I finally broached the subject with Liam over the phone. Dad's not doing well, I said, my voice trembling. The doctors say the treatment is his last hope. I really need you here with me, Liam. I can't do this alone. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Liam sighed heavily. Evelyn, I'm sorry, but I can't just drop everything and come to the hospital every time you snap your fingers. I have responsibilities at work, and I can't afford to take time off right now. I felt like I had been slapped. Responsibilities? Liam, this is my father we're talking about, the man who mentored you, who treated you like a son, and you can't even be bothered to visit him on his deathbed. Liam's voice turned cold. Look, I'll try to stop by this weekend. Okay, but I can't make any promises. And frankly, Evelyn, I think you're being a bit dramatic about all this. Your father's a fighter. He'll pull through. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking with anger and disbelief. How could Liam be so callous, so unfeeling? Did he really care so little about me and my family? True to his word, Liam did stop by the hospital that weekend. But he might as well not have bothered. He spent the entire visit glued to his phone, texting and scrolling through emails. When I tried to engage him in conversation, he responded with monosyllabic grunts and shrugs. Dad, who was barely lucid, seemed to sense the tension between us. He reached out and grabbed Liam's hand, his grip surprisingly strong. Take care of my girl, Liam, he rasped, his eyes boring into my husband's. She's going to need you more than ever now. Liam nodded, a tight smile on his face. Of course, Jack. You can count on me. But as soon as we left the hospital room, Liam's demeanor changed. He pulled his hand away from mine and stalked off down the hallway, his eyes fixed on his phone screen. I had to jog to keep up with him. Liam, wait, I called out. Can we talk about this? About us? Liam spun around, his face twisted with annoyance. There's nothing to talk about, Evelyn. I came to the hospital, just like you asked. What more do you want from me? I stared at him, my heart breaking into a million pieces. I want you to be here for me, Liam. I want you to support me, to love me, to be the husband you promised to be when we got married. Liam rolled his eyes. God, Evelyn, you're so needy. I can't be your emotional crutch every time something bad happens. I have my own life, my own needs, and right now, those needs don't include sitting around a hospital room watching your father die. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the hallway, tears streaming down my face. In that moment, I knew that my marriage was truly over. Liam had shown his true colors, and they were ugly and selfish and cruel. And I knew that I would never forgive him for abandoning me when I needed him most. The call came in the middle of the night, jolting me out of a restless sleep. It was the hospital, telling me that Dad had taken a turn for the worse, and that I needed to come right away. I stumbled out of bed, my heart pounding in my chest, and raced to the hospital as fast as I could. But I was too late. By the time I arrived, Dad was gone, his body still and lifeless on the hospital bed. I collapsed into the chair beside him, sobbing uncontrollably, my entire world shattered into a million pieces. I don't know how long I sat there, holding Dad's hand and crying until I had no tears left. At some point, a nurse came in and gently told me that I needed to leave, that they had to prepare Dad's body for the funeral home. I nodded numbly and stumbled out of the room, my legs barely able to support my weight. I called Liam on the way home, my voice thick with tears. "Dad's gone," I choked out. "He passed away before I could get to the hospital." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Liam sighed heavily. "I'm sorry for your loss, Evelyn. But I told you, I have a business trip this weekend. I can't just cancel it at the last minute." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. "A business trip? Liam, my father just died. I need you here with me, not off schmoozing with clients." Liam's voice turned cold. "Evelyn, I have responsibilities at work. I can't just drop everything because your father passed away. You're going to have to handle this on your own." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Handle it on my own? "Liam, I'm your wife. We're supposed to support each other through things like this. How can you be so heartless?" Liam sighed again, like I was being unreasonable. "Look, I'll try to make it back for the funeral, okay? But I can't promise anything. And frankly, Evelyn, I think you're overreacting. People die all the time. It's a part of life." I hung up the phone, my hands shaking with anger and disbelief. How could Liam be so callous, so unfeeling? Did he really care so little about me and my family? The day of the funeral arrived, and I woke up to an empty bed. Liam had already left for his business trip, leaving me to face the day alone. I dressed mechanically, my mind numb with grief, and drove to the funeral home in a daze. The service was a blur of tearful eulogies and somber hymns. I sat in the front row, my eyes fixed on Dad's casket, barely registering the words being spoken. Olivia sat beside me, holding my hand tightly, her presence the only thing keeping me from falling apart completely. After the service, I stood by the casket, accepting condolences from friends and family. Liam was nowhere to be seen, and I felt a fresh wave of anger and betrayal wash over me. How could he abandon me like this, on the worst day of my life? As I was leaving the funeral home, Liam's car pulled up beside me. He rolled down the window and held out a single dollar bill, a smirk on his face. "For the funeral expenses," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I stared at him in disbelief, my grief giving way to pure, unadulterated rage. I snatched the dollar bill from his hand and crumpled it in my fist, my eyes blazing with fury. "You bastard," I hissed. "How dare you show your face here after everything you've done? How dare you disrespect my father's memory like this?" Liam's smirk only widened. "Oh, come on, Evelyn. It's just a joke. Lighten up a little." I shook my head, my voice trembling with anger. "No, Liam, this is the last straw. I'm done with you, and I'm done with this marriage. I want a divorce." Liam's face hardened. "Fine, but don't expect a penny from me, Evelyn. I'll make sure you end up with nothing." I laughed bitterly. "I don't want your money, Liam. I want my life back, and I'm going to get it one way or another." With that, I turned and walked away, the crumpled dollar bill still clenched in my fist. I knew that the road ahead would be hard, but I also knew that I was strong enough to survive it. And I knew that I would make Liam pay for what he had done, no matter what it took. The weeks after Dad's funeral passed in a haze of grief and anger. I went through the motions of my daily life, but inside I was a wreck, consumed by thoughts of Liam's betrayal and my own desire for revenge. I knew that I couldn't let him get away with what he had done, but I didn't know where to start. One evening, as Olivia and I sat on my couch, sipping wine and trying to make sense of everything that had happened, she turned to me with a serious expression on her face. "Evelyn, I've been thinking," she said. If Liam is really having an affair, we need to find out the truth. We need to hire a private investigator. I stared at her, my heart pounding in my chest. A private investigator? Liv, I don't know if I can afford that. Olivia shook her head. Don't worry about the money, Evelyn. I'll help you pay for it. This is important. We need to know what Liam is up to so we can use it against him in the divorce. I hesitated for a moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, let's do it. The next day, Olivia and I met with Jack, the private investigator she had found. He was a gruff, no-nonsense kind of guy, with a hard face and a piercing gaze. He listened carefully as I told him about Liam's behavior, about the late nights at work, and the secretive texts, and the way he had abandoned me at Dad's funeral. I'll look into it, Jack said when I had finished. If your husband is cheating on you, Mrs. Thompson, I'll find out, and I'll get you the evidence you need to nail his ass to the wall. I felt a surge of hope and determination at his words. Finally, someone was on my side. Someone who understood what I was going through and was willing to help me fight back. For the next 2 months, Jack worked tirelessly on my case, tailing Liam and gathering evidence of his affair. Every week, he would meet with me and Olivia, showing us photos and recordings of Liam and his mistress, a young woman named Sophia who worked at his company. I felt sick to my stomach every time I saw them together, laughing and touching and looking at each other with lust in their eyes. But I also felt a fierce sense of satisfaction, knowing that I had the proof I needed to destroy Liam once and for all. Finally, Jack called me with the news I'd been waiting for. Mrs. Thompson, I have everything I need, he said. Your husband has been having an affair with Sophia for months, and I have the evidence to prove it. It's time to confront him and take him down. I felt a rush of adrenaline at his words. This was it. This was my chance to make Liam pay for what he had done, to take back my life and my dignity. I called Olivia and told her the news, my voice shaking with excitement and nerves. It's time, Liv, I said. It's time to take that bastard down. Olivia let out a whoop of joy. Hell yes, it is. What's the plan? I took a deep breath, my mind racing with possibilities. And then it hit me. Liam's company was holding their annual gala in 2 weeks, a black tie event where he was set to receive a major award for his work. It was the perfect opportunity to expose him in front of all his colleagues and clients, to humiliate him the way he had humiliated me. The gala, I said, my voice steady and determined. We're going to confront him at the gala, in front of everyone. We're going to show them all what a lying, cheating scumbag he really is. Olivia was silent for a moment, then let out a low whistle. Damn, Evelyn, that's bold. Are you sure you're ready for that? I nodded, my jaw set with resolve. I'm ready, Liv. I'm done letting Liam control my life. It's time to take back what's mine and make him pay for what he's done, and I'm going to do it in front of the whole damn world. The day of the gala arrived, and I woke up with a sense of calm determination. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the chance to finally make Liam pay for what he had done. I spent the morning going over the evidence with Jack and Olivia, making sure we had everything we needed to take Liam down. As I got ready for the event, I couldn't help but feel a sense of nervous excitement. I had bought a stunning red dress for the occasion, one that hugged my curves and made me feel powerful and confident. I did my hair and makeup with care, wanting to look my absolute best when I confronted Liam in front of everyone. When I arrived at the gala, I was struck by the opulence of the event. The ballroom was decorated with glittering chandeliers and elaborate floral arrangements, and the guests were all dressed to the nines in tuxedos and gowns. I scanned the room, looking for Liam, and spotted him near the stage, chatting and laughing with a group of his colleagues. I made my way over to him, my heart pounding in my chest. As I approached, Liam turned and saw me, his eyes widening in surprise. Evelyn, he said, his voice tight. What are you doing here? I smiled coldly. I'm here to support my husband, of course. Isn't that what a good wife does? Liam's face hardened. I thought I made it clear that I didn't want you here tonight. I shrugged. Too bad. I have every right to be here, Liam. After all, we're still married, aren't we? Just then, I saw Sophia approaching from across the room, a smug smile on her face. She was wearing a tight black dress that left little to the imagination, and I felt a surge of anger and disgust at the sight of her. Liam, darling, she purred, slipping her arm through his. Who's this? I stepped forward, my eyes blazing with fury. I'm his wife, you little slut, and I have something to say to both of you. Liam's face turned red with anger. Evelyn, don't you dare. But I cut him off, my voice ringing out loud and clear across the ballroom. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? I have an important announcement to make. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to me. I took a deep breath, then held up the folder of evidence that Jack had given me. My husband, Liam Thompson, has been having an affair with his coworker, Sophia, for months. I have proof of their relationship, including photos, recordings, and witness statements. Liam has been lying to me, to his colleagues, and to his clients, and it's time for the truth to come out. There was a collective gasp from the crowd, and I saw Liam's face turn pale with shock and fear. Sophia's mouth dropped open, and she took a step back, her eyes darting around the room. I continued, my voice shaking with emotion. Liam, you have betrayed me in the worst possible way. You abandoned me when I needed you most, when I was grieving the loss of my father. You gave me $1 for his funeral expenses, like it was some kind of sick joke. And all the while you were sleeping with this woman behind my back, making a fool out of me and our marriage. I turned to Sophia, my eyes narrowed with contempt. And you, Sophia, how dare you come between a husband and wife? How dare you steal another woman's man and flaunt it in her face like it's something to be proud of? You're nothing but a homewrecker and a whore. The room erupted into chaos, with people shouting and pointing and whispering to each other. I saw Liam's boss approaching, his face red with anger, and I knew that Liam's career was over. He would be fired, disgraced, and humiliated, just like he deserved. I turned to leave, my head held high, but Liam grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin. You bitch, he hissed. You've ruined everything. I'll make you pay for this, I swear to God. I yanked my arm away, my eyes blazing with triumph. You already have, Liam. You ruined our marriage, our life together. And now I'm going to ruin you. Goodbye, Liam. I hope you rot in hell. And with that, I walked out of the ballroom, feeling like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I had done it. I had gotten my revenge, and I had taken back my life. And I knew that no matter what happened next, I would never let anyone hurt me like that again. The fallout from the gala was swift and brutal. Liam was fired from his job the next day, his reputation in tatters. His clients abandoned him, his colleagues shunned him, and his once promising career was reduced to ashes. I watched from a distance as he spiraled into despair, drowning his sorrows in alcohol and self-pity. But I had no sympathy for him. He had brought this on himself, with his lies and his betrayals and his cruelty. He had destroyed our marriage, our life together, and he deserved to suffer the consequences. I filed for divorce the next week, citing irreconcilable differences. Liam didn't even bother to contest it, too broken and defeated to put up a fight. I hired the best divorce attorney in town, determined to get every penny I was entitled to. In the end, I walked away with a generous settlement, including the house, the car, and a sizable chunk of Liam's assets. He was left with nothing but his shame and his regrets, a shell of the man he had once been. I moved into a new apartment, determined to start fresh and put the past behind me. Olivia helped me decorate, filling the space with bright colors and cheerful art. We spent long hours talking and laughing, marveling at how far I had come and how much I had overcome. But even as I tried to move on, Liam couldn't let go. He started calling me late at night, drunk and rambling, begging me to take him back. He showed up at my apartment, pounding on the door and screaming my name until the neighbors called the police. He sent me long, rambling emails, filled with apologies and promises and pleas for forgiveness. I deleted them all without reading them. My heart hardened against him. I had given him everything, and he had thrown it all away. I had no room in my life for his lies and his manipulations anymore. One day, as I was leaving my apartment, I found Liam waiting for me on the street, his eyes bloodshot and his clothes rumpled. He stumbled towards me, his hands outstretched, his voice slurred with drink. "Evelyn," he mumbled, "please, I'm sorry. I know I messed up, I know I hurt you, but I love you. I need you. Please give me another chance." I stared at him, my eyes cold and unforgiving. "You don't love me, Liam. You never did. You only loved yourself and what I could do for you. And now, you have nothing. No job, no money, no friends. You're pathetic. Liam's face crumpled and he fell to his knees, sobbing like a child. Please, Evelyn. I'll do anything. I'll change. I'll be better. Just don't leave me alone. I shook my head, my voice firm and unyielding. It's too late, Liam. You had your chance, and you blew it. I'm done with you. I'm moving on, and I'm never looking back. I stepped around him, my head held high, and walked away, leaving him crying on the sidewalk. I felt a sense of peace wash over me, a feeling of closure and resolution. I had faced my demons, and I had won. I was free. Months passed, and I settled into my new life. I focused on my job, my friends, and my own happiness. I started volunteering at a local women's shelter, helping other women who had been through similar struggles. I found a sense of purpose and fulfillment that I had never known before. And then, on the anniversary of my father's death, I visited his grave, a bouquet of flowers in my hand. I knelt down beside the headstone, my fingers tracing the letters of his name. I did it, Dad, I whispered. I got justice for you. I got justice for myself. And I'm going to be okay. I'm going to live my life to the fullest, just like you always wanted me to. I placed the flowers on the grave, then stood up, brushing the dirt from my knees. I took one last look at the headstone, then turned and walked away, my head held high, my heart full of hope and promise. I had survived the worst that life could throw at me, and I had come out stronger on the other side. And I knew that no matter what happened next, I would never let anyone break me again.
The numbers swam before my eyes as I stared at my laptop screen. $3,000 transferred to an account I'd never seen before. Another $4,000 the month before that. The transactions stretched back almost a year, each one a precise knife twist in my gut. I'm Emily, and until 10 minutes ago, I thought I knew everything about my husband's finances. We'd built our life on transparency, or so I believed. The shared spreadsheets, the joint accounts, the careful planning, all of it now felt like an elaborate joke at my expense. Hey, babe, have you seen my charcoal pencils? Tom's voice floated down from his studio upstairs. The same voice that had promised me honesty 3 years ago at the altar. The same voice that had apparently been lying to me for months. No, I called back, my own voice steady, despite the tremor in my hands. Tom, could you come down here for a minute? The wooden stairs creaked under his feet. He appeared in the doorway, paint-splattered jeans, and that easy smile I used to find so charming. Now it just made my stomach turn. What's up? He leaned against the doorframe, casual as ever. Want to explain these transfers to an account under your parents' name? The smile flickered, died. His shoulders tensed, and for a moment, he looked like a deer caught in headlights. Then the mask slipped back into place. Oh, that. Mom and Dad have been having some trouble with their mortgage. I've been helping them out a bit. A bit? I turned the laptop toward him. $7,000 last month alone. Without telling me. They're my parents, Emily. What was I supposed to do, let them lose their house? You were supposed to talk to me. We're supposed to be partners. He ran a hand through his hair, leaving a streak of blue paint near his temple. You wouldn't have understood. You've always been weird about money. Weird about money? The laugh that escaped me didn't sound like my own. Is that what you call wanting to know where our savings are going? They raised me, Emily. They gave me everything. I owe them. And what about what you owe me? What about our future? I scrolled through the transactions again. This is our down payment for a house. Our emergency fund. Our future children's college fund. Their family, he said, as if that explained everything. I'm your family too. Or at least I thought I was. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I caught his mother's name on the screen. Of course. Margaret always had impeccable timing. I need to take this, he said, already turning away. No. I slammed the laptop shut. You need to explain why you've been lying to me for months. I haven't been lying. I just didn't want to worry you. Didn't want to worry me? The words tasted bitter. Or didn't want me to stop you from bankrolling your parents' lifestyle? His face hardened. You don't understand my relationship with them. You're right. I don't understand lying to your spouse. I don't understand stealing our future to fund your parents' present. His phone buzzed again. This time he answered it, turning his back to me. Hi, Mom. Yeah, I'm on my way. Just need to grab those papers. I sat there, watching my husband walk away from our marriage one step at a time, up those creaking stairs to his studio. The truth hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't just fighting Tom's deception. I was fighting against Margaret's influence, against years of manipulation I'd been too blind to see. The laptop screen glowed accusingly in the growing darkness. Somewhere upstairs, Tom was probably already arranging another transfer, another betrayal dressed up as filial duty. Fine. If this was how they wanted to play it, I could play too. But they were about to learn that I played to win. The doorbell chimed just as I finished hiding the bank statements in my home office. Margaret's silhouette loomed through the frosted glass, her shadow stretching across our welcome mat like an omen. Emily, darling. She swept in, designer purse swinging from her arm, bringing with her the cloying scent of expensive perfume. I brought lunch. We need to talk about the garden party next weekend. I forced a smile, knowing exactly what was coming. Every conversation with Margaret was a carefully choreographed dance of criticism wrapped in sugar-coated concern. Actually, I have a work deadline. Nonsense. She was already unpacking containers onto my kitchen counter. Family comes first. That's something modern women seem to forget these days. The way she said modern women made it sound like a disease. I watched her arrange the food with military precision, noting how she'd brought enough for 3, despite knowing Tom was at his studio. Tom tells me you've been asking questions about our financial arrangements. Her voice was casual, but her eyes were sharp as she handed me a plate. I hope you understand how important family support is. Support should go both ways, Margaret. Of course it does, dear. She settled at my kitchen island like she owned it. We've given Tom everything, his education, his artistic opportunities. Now it's natural for him to want to give back. My fork scraped against the plate. With our joint savings? Marriage is about sharing, isn't it? She dabbed her lips with a napkin. Though I suppose that's hard to understand when you're so focused on your career. The word dripped with disdain. I thought about the hidden bank statements, about Tom's betrayal, about all the times Margaret had undermined me while smiling to my face. Actually, I understand sharing perfectly. What I don't understand is secrecy. Oh, Emily. She reached across the counter to pat my hand. I resisted the urge to pull away. You're making such a fuss over nothing. Tom's just being a good son. Surely you don't want to come between him and his family? I am his family. Of course you are, dear. For now. She smiled, showing too many teeth. But blood is thicker than water, isn't it? My phone buzzed, a message from Tom. Mom says you're being difficult about the money. Can we talk later? Of course. She'd probably texted him the moment she sat down. Margaret, I said, setting down my fork. Do you know how much Tom has been transferring to your account? Money is such a vulgar topic of conversation. Not when it's my money being spent without my knowledge. Her smile faltered. Tom knows what he's doing. He doesn't need his wife questioning his decisions about his family. Our family. Our decisions. Our money. You're being very ungrateful, Emily. She stood, gathering her things. After everything we've done for you both. Robert and I have always treated you like a daughter. No, I said quietly. You've treated me like a threat. She paused at the door, her face a perfect mask of hurt confusion. I can see you're upset. We'll discuss this when you're thinking more clearly. The garden party is at 2 on Saturday. Wear something appropriate this time. The door clicked shut behind her, but her presence lingered like a bad smell. My phone buzzed again, Tom asking why I was upsetting his mother. Of course he'd take her side. He always did. I opened my laptop, pulling up our joint account again. A new transaction had posted while Margaret was here, another $2,000, transferred not 30 minutes ago. She must have texted Tom during lunch, and he jumped to do her bidding without a second thought. My hands shook as I took screenshots of everything. 3 years of marriage, and I'd never seen what was right in front of me. I wasn't just fighting financial betrayal, I was fighting a carefully constructed system of control. With Margaret pulling the strings and Tom dancing to her tune. Fine. If they wanted to play family politics, I could play too. But first, I needed to make a call. I picked up my phone and dialed. Samantha? I need your help. It's time to start planning my exit strategy. The gallery opening should have been Tom's moment of triumph. Instead, I stood in the corner, clutching a glass of cheap wine, watching my husband lie through his teeth about our financial situation. The series sold remarkably well, he told a potential buyer, gesturing at the abstract canvases lining the walls. Almost everything's been claimed already. I knew better. I'd seen the real sales figures that morning, exactly 2 pieces sold, and at half the asking price. The rest was fiction, just like our marriage. Emily. Margaret's voice cut through the crowd. She glided toward me in an expensive new dress, Robert trailing behind her like a well-trained shadow. Darling, why are you hiding back here? Come celebrate Tom's success. Success. Right. I took another sip of wine, remembering the credit card statement I'd discovered that morning. $20,000 in new charges, gallery rental, catering, promotional materials. All on our joint card, all without a word to me. The show looks wonderful, I said, the lies tasting bitter on my tongue. Of course it does. We always knew Tom would make it as an artist. Margaret beamed. Though it helped that Robert and I knew the right people to invite tonight. And the new car in your driveway? Did the right people help with that too? Her smile flickered. Robert suddenly found the floor fascinating. Tom insisted, she said. After all we've done to support his career, it's the least he could do. The least he could do. With our money. Our future. I watched Tom across the room, charming another potential buyer with that easy smile I used to trust. Emily. David from work appeared at my elbow, a welcome interruption. I didn't expect to see you here. David. I didn't know you were interested in art. I'm not, usually. But when I saw Tom's name in the paper. He glanced at Margaret, who was watching our interaction with narrowed eyes. Could I borrow you for a minute? There's something you should see. He led me to a quiet corner, pulling out his phone. Remember that audit I mentioned last week? Well, I found something interesting about Thompson Gallery Services. My heart stopped. That was the company Tom had insisted he needed for his art business, the one I'd helped him set up 3 years ago. What about it? The payments don't match the reported income. Not even close. David showed me the screen. Either your husband's the worst accountant in history, or he's hiding money. The pieces clicked into place, the missing funds, the suspicious transfers, Margaret's new car. Emily? Tom's voice behind me. I turned to find him staring at David's phone, his face pale. What are you doing? Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing. I held up the phone. Want to explain these numbers? This isn't the time or place. When is the time, Tom? When the account is completely empty? When your parents have bled us dry? Margaret materialized beside him. Emily, you're making a scene. No, Mother, I spat the word like poison. I'm finally seeing the scene you've been directing all along. The gallery had gone quiet. Faces turned toward us, hungry for drama. Everything I've done has been for our family, Tom said, reaching for my arm. I stepped back. No. Everything you've done has been for their family. I was just the convenient bank account. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I set down my wine glass with deliberate care. I understand that while I was working 60-hour weeks to support your art, you were funneling money to your parents. I understand that every time I sacrificed for our future, you were sacrificing our future for them. Emily, please. I'm done. The words came out calm, certain. Done with the lies, done with the manipulation, done with all of it. I turned to David. Thank you for showing me this. I'll need copies for my lawyer. Margaret gasped. Tom's face crumpled. But for the first time in months, I felt light, free, certain. I walked out of the gallery into the cool night air, leaving behind the wreckage of my marriage and the sweet satisfaction of finally speaking the truth. My phone buzzed, Samantha, right on cue. Is it done? Yes, I said, smiling into the darkness. It's done. And I'm just getting started. Samantha's kitchen had always been my safe haven, but tonight even the familiar scent of her signature chai couldn't calm my racing thoughts. 3 missed calls from Tom, 6 from Margaret, and 1 very interesting email from David about Thompson Gallery Services financial records. They'd been living like royalty, I said, scrolling through the documentation David had sent. 5-star restaurants, luxury vacations, spa weekends, all while Tom told me we needed to tighten our belts for his art career. Samantha set a steaming mug in front of me. Have you talked to a lawyer yet? Tomorrow morning. I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic. But there's something else. What? The mortgage payments Tom claimed he was making for his parents? Their house was paid off 3 years ago. Before our wedding. Samantha's eyes widened. So where did all that money really go? My phone buzzed again, Tom. I silenced it, but not before seeing his message, please come home. We can fix this. I'll tell you everything. You're not actually considering it, are you? Samantha asked, reading my expression. I don't know what I'm considering anymore. I pushed away from the counter, pacing. 3 years, Sam. 3 years of lies, manipulation, and theft. And you know what the worst part is? I still love him. How pathetic is that? It's not pathetic, it's human. She paused, choosing her words carefully. But love isn't enough when there's no trust. My phone lit up with a text from David, found something else. Can we meet tomorrow after your lawyer appointment? Emily. Samantha's voice was gentle but firm. What's your endgame here? Revenge? Reconciliation? You need to decide. Before I could answer, someone knocked at her front door. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of Margaret's perfectly coiffed hair. How did she? Tom must have tracked your phone, Samantha said, already moving to block the door. You don't have to talk to her. But Margaret's voice carried through anyway. Emily, darling, please. This family falling apart is breaking Tom's heart. He hasn't eaten, hasn't slept. I felt the familiar pull of guilt, the urge to smooth things over. Then I remembered the financial records, the lies, the years of manipulation. Emily's not available, Samantha called through the door. And if you don't leave, I'm calling the police. This doesn't concern you, Margaret snapped. Emily, think about what you're throwing away. Think about Tom's career, his future. His future? I moved to the door, anger burning away uncertainty. What about my future? The one you've been systematically stealing? We can explain everything, Margaret's voice softened. Come home. We'll talk it through as a family. Family? I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. Is that what you call people you exploit? Silence from the other side of the door. Then, Roberts had a heart attack. My hand froze on the doorknob. Samantha grabbed my arm, shaking her head. She's lying, she whispered. It's manipulation. He's asking for you, Margaret continued. The doctors say. I yanked open the door. Margaret stood there, perfectly composed, no signs of distress or hospital visits on her designer outfit. "Robert's fine, isn't he?" I said quietly. "This is just another lie." She straightened, mask slipping. "Sometimes we do what's necessary to protect our family." "No. You do what's necessary to control your family. There's a difference." "You ungrateful." "Goodbye, Margaret." I closed the door in her face, turning back to Samantha. "I think I just found my endgame." "Which is?" "They wanted to play family?" I pulled out my phone, pulling up David's message. "Let's see how they handle having their perfect family facade torn apart in public. Every lie, every manipulation, every stolen dollar, all of it exposed. Emily. No more guilt. No more manipulation." I typed a quick response to David, "Meeting confirmed. Bring everything you've found." Through the window, I watched Margaret retreat to her luxury car, the one my money had helped buy. Soon she'd learn that karma wasn't just a concept. It was coming for all of them, and I was going to be its delivery system. The lawyer's office felt too small, too warm, as David spread the documents across the mahogany desk. Each paper was another nail in the coffin of my marriage, another revelation that made my hands shake. "Tax fraud," David said quietly. "Not just misappropriation of funds. They've been using your joint business to launder money for years." My wedding ring caught the fluorescent light as I reached for the papers. 3 years of marriage reduced to spreadsheets and bank statements. "How much?" "Close to $500,000. He hesitated. "Emily, this isn't just about divorce anymore. This is criminal." My phone vibrated, another message from Tom, "Please come home. Mom's hysterical. Dad's threatening to disown me. We can fix this." I switched it off. "What are my options?" I asked the lawyer, Catherine Mills, who'd been silently taking notes. "We can file criminal charges," she said, "but that means public record. Everything comes out, the fraud, the manipulation, all of it. Including my name on those business documents," I added. "I signed them too." "Under false pretenses," David interjected. "We have proof Tom misrepresented." A knock at the door interrupted him. Catherine's assistant stepped in, looking uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, but there's a Margaret Thompson insisting on speaking with Emily. She says it's about Robert's health." "That trick again?" I started to refuse, but David held up his hand. "Let her in. You need to hear this." Margaret swept in like she owned the place, but I caught the cracks in her facade, smudged mascara, trembling hands. "Emily, you have to stop this madness." Her voice cracked. "Robert. The stress. He's had a real heart attack this time." "Like the fake one you invented yesterday?" "This is different. He's in intensive care." The doctor said. "Mrs. Thompson," Catherine interrupted, "are you aware that threatening or attempting to manipulate my client could be considered harassment?" Margaret's mask slipped completely. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Digging up our private affairs, threatening our family's reputation? What about Tom's career? His future? What about my future?" I stood, anger finally overwhelming caution. "The one you stole? We gave you everything. A place in our family, connections. You gave me lies." I picked up one of the documents. "Like this vacation to the Maldives last spring? When Tom told me he was at an art retreat?" She paled. "That's not. Were these spa weekends? The shopping sprees? All while I worked overtime to support your son's struggling artist lifestyle?" "Emily," David warned softly, but I was beyond stopping. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice steady, despite my racing heart. "You're going to sign a confession admitting to the fraud. All of you, Robert, and Tom. You're going to repay every penny you stole from me. Or I go public with everything." "You wouldn't dare. It would destroy Tom." "Like you destroyed my trust?" My marriage? My financial security? She reached for her phone. I'm calling Tom. Go ahead. I spread the documents across the desk. Tell him to bring his checkbook. And a pen. Margaret's hand froze over her phone. For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. You're bluffing, she whispered. I pulled out my own phone, pulling up the local newspaper's contact information. Want to bet your country club membership on that? Your social standing? Your freedom? The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Then Margaret did something I'd never seen before. She crumpled into a chair and began to cry. What do you want? She asked between sobs. I looked at Catherine, who nodded slightly. Everything, I said. And you have 24 hours to decide. As Margaret fled the office, David touched my arm. Are you sure about this? I stared at the documents scattered across the desk, each one a reminder of 3 years of lies. No, I admitted. But I'm sure about one thing, they're about to learn that Karma takes Visa, MasterCard, and cashier's checks. The game was changing. And this time I was writing the rules. The moving truck idled in our driveway as I unlocked the front door for the last time. 24 hours had passed since my ultimatum, and the Thompson family's response had been silence. Pure, calculated silence. Until now. Tom sat at our kitchen table, head in his hands. Margaret stood by the window, arms crossed, while Robert, apparently recovered from his heart attack, leaned against the counter. You're really doing this? Tom's voice cracked. I set my box of packing supplies on the counter. The movers will be in soon. You might want to clear out. Emily. Robert stepped forward, his usual passivity replaced with something harder. We've spoken to our lawyers. They say you're equally liable for any financial irregularities. Mutual assured destruction? I laughed. That's your play? We're trying to protect our family, Margaret snapped. Your family? I pulled out my phone, showing them the screen. Like these photos of your Maldives vacation? The one where Tom was supposedly at an art retreat? The society pages would love these. Tom's head snapped up. You wouldn't. Try me. The movers appeared in the doorway. I gestured them toward the stairs, but Margaret blocked their path. This is still our house. Actually, I cut in, it's not. Check the deed. I bought it with my income while Tom was struggling to launch his career. You vindictive little. Mom. Tom stood suddenly. Can you give us a minute? Margaret opened her mouth to protest, but Robert touched her arm. They left, Margaret's heels clicking against the hardwood like tiny hammers. I loved you, Tom said quietly once we were alone. I still love you. Love doesn't empty bank accounts. I can explain everything. Save it. I turned to the movers. Start upstairs. Master bedroom. Tom grabbed my arm as I tried to pass. Please. Just listen. Mom and Dad. They sacrificed everything for my art. When they needed help. They manipulated you into stealing from your wife. I jerked away. And you let them. We can fix this. Pay you back. With what money? The gallery's failing, Tom. Your parents are broke. And you. I gestured around our house, at all the things we'd built together. You never really wanted this, did you? A real marriage, a partnership. You wanted a bank account with a pulse. His face crumpled. That's not fair. Neither is fraud. The movers thundered down the stairs with our bedroom furniture, my furniture now. Tom watched them carry out pieces of our life together, each item a silent accusation. If you do this, he said, voice low, if you expose everything, you'll destroy us all. Including yourself. I pulled out an envelope. Then signed the confession. Admit what you and your parents did. Pay me back, and I'll keep quiet. You know we can't afford. Sell the vacation house. Margaret's jewelry. Your father's collector cars. I stepped closer. Or I press charges, and everyone learns how the respected Thompson family has been operating. Emily. Your choice, Tom. But choose fast. My lawyer's waiting. He stared at the envelope, hands shaking. Then Margaret burst back in. Don't you dare sign anything. She snatched the envelope. We'll fight this. We'll. You'll what? I turned to the movers. Take everything except his art supplies. Those were bought with stolen money anyway. Margaret ripped the envelope to shreds. You think you've won? We'll destroy you. Every connection, every opportunity. Mom, stop. No. She needs to learn. I walked out while they argued, leaving them to their mutual destruction. Outside, David waited in his car, ready to follow the moving truck to my new place. You okay? He asked as I slid into the passenger seat. I watched Tom and Margaret's silhouettes through the window, still fighting, still trapped in their toxic dance. 3 years of my life gone, my financial security in shambles, my reputation potentially ruined. No, I admitted. But I will be. I pulled out my phone and opened the email I drafted to the local newspaper. My finger hovered over send as David started the car. Sometimes karma needed a little push. The newspaper headline hit like a bomb. Local artist family accused of financial fraud. My finger trembled over the screen as social media notifications flooded my phone. The Thompson family's carefully constructed facade was crumbling, one share at a time. I hadn't pressed send on that email. Someone else had beaten me to it. My new apartment's doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Tom, looking haunted. Margaret stood behind him, her perfect makeup unable to hide her rage. I opened the door, but blocked the entrance. How did you find me? David, Tom said quietly. He thought we should talk. Of course. David's misplaced sense of fairness. I'd have to deal with that betrayal later. There's nothing to discuss. You destroyed us, Margaret hissed. Are you happy now? I didn't publish that story. Liar. She tried to push past me, but I held my ground. Robert did. The words hung in the air like smoke. Tom's face went slack with shock. Margaret grabbed the doorframe for support. What? Check your phone, I said. He's probably confessed to everything by now. Tom pulled out his phone, hands shaking. His father's message was there, just as I'd predicted. I'd received my own copy an hour ago. Dad would never. He stopped reading, color draining from his face. Turns out your father has a conscience, I said. Unlike some people. Margaret snatched the phone, her carefully manicured nails clicking against the screen. As she read, her mask finally cracked completely. That weak-willed fool, she spat. After everything I'd done for this family. Everything you've done? Tom's voice cracked. Mom, you're the one who told me to hide the transfers from Emily. You're the one who. I was protecting you. Your art, your future. My future? He laughed, bitter and hollow. Look around, Mom. My marriage is over. My reputation is ruined. The gallery's finished. What future? I watched them unravel, feeling strangely empty. This was my revenge, served not by my hand but by karma itself. We can fix this, Margaret insisted, turning to me. Emily, if you just tell everyone it was a misunderstanding. Like you told everyone Robert's heart attack was real? She flinched. Or how about the art sales you faked? The tax records you doctored? I pulled out my phone. Should I keep going? Please, Tom whispered. Emily, I'm sorry. I'll do anything. It's too late. I stepped back into my apartment. Robert's confession is just the beginning. The police have everything. Margaret's face contorted. You vindictive little. Mom, stop. Tom grabbed her arm. Haven't you done enough? For the first time, I saw Tom stand up to his mother. Too little, too late. I loved you, I told him quietly. But love without trust is just another form of manipulation. You taught me that. Emily. Goodbye, Tom. I started to close the door, then paused. Oh, and Margaret? The country club called. They're revoking your membership. Apparently, fraud doesn't fit their image. Her scream of rage was cut off by the closing door. I leaned against it, listening to their arguing voices fade down the hallway. My phone buzzed, a message from Robert, "It's done. I'm sorry for everything. The police have my full statement." Another buzz, "David, I'm sorry I told them where to find you. But you needed this closure." And finally, "Samantha, you okay?" I looked around my new apartment, at the boxes still waiting to be unpacked. At the fresh start I'd bought with 3 years of pain and betrayal. "No," I typed back. "But I will be." I walked to the window, watching Tom help his sobbing mother into their car, no, her car, bought with my money. Soon they'd learn just how expensive karma could be. The Thompson family was about to discover that sometimes the greatest revenge isn't what you do to others, it's letting them destroy themselves while you walk away free. The last box from my old life arrived on my doorstep, unexpected, unasked for. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, lay my wedding album and a letter in Tom's messy scrawl. I set the album aside without opening it and unfolded the letter. The words blurred, then sharpened. Emily. Dad took a plea deal. Mom's facing trial. The gallery's finished. You won. Or maybe we all lost. I don't know anymore. My phone buzzed, Samantha, sending me a link to another news article. Margaret Thompson, society maven, charged with financial fraud. The mighty had fallen, their empire of lies, crumbling to dust. I crumpled Tom's letter, but couldn't quite throw it away. Not yet. The doorbell rang. David stood there, holding coffee and looking uncertain. Thought you might want company, he said, then noticed the box. Oh. Bad timing? Perfect timing, actually. I grabbed my coat. Let's go somewhere else. We walked to the park where Tom had proposed, though I didn't tell David that. The autumn air carried the scent of endings and beginnings. Robert called me, I said, watching a family play frisbee nearby. He's testifying against Margaret. Says Tom finally moved out of their house. Are you okay? I considered the question, really considered it. I thought revenge would feel better than this. But I didn't actually do anything. They destroyed themselves. I just stopped protecting them from the consequences. A jogger passed, leaves crunching under her feet. In another life, that could have been me, running from my problems instead of facing them. The detective handling their case called, I continued. Asked if I wanted to press additional charges. And? I said no. I sipped my coffee, letting the warmth spread through my chest. Enough people have been burned by this fire. David nodded, understanding what I wasn't saying. Sometimes the best revenge was simply walking away, head held high. My phone buzzed again, an email from my lawyer. The divorce was final. No contests, no delays. Tom had signed everything without argument. You know what the strangest part is? I said, closing the email. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just free. A child's laughter carried across the park, pure and unburdened. I thought about the wedding album sitting in that box, about the young woman who'd smiled so hopefully at the camera, believing in forever. What will you do now? David asked. Live, I said simply. On my own terms. We walked back to my apartment in comfortable silence. The box still sat by the door, Tom's crumpled letter beside it. Want help getting rid of that? David gestured at the box. No. I picked up the letter, smoothing it out. One line caught my eye: "I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to be the man you deserved." At least he'd finally told the truth about something. I struck a match, watching the flame dance. The letter caught quickly, curling into ash in my kitchen sink. The wedding album would go to Goodwill. Let someone else's memories live in those pages. "Emily?" David hesitated at the door. "There's an art exhibition next weekend. Nothing fancy, just local artists. If you'd like to." "Not yet," I said gently. "But ask me again sometime." After he left, I stood at my window, watching the city lights blink on one by one. Somewhere out there, the Thompsons were facing their own darkness, their carefully constructed world falling apart. But that wasn't my story anymore. I opened my laptop, pulling up the novel I'd started writing, not about revenge or betrayal, but about redemption. About a woman who learned that sometimes the greatest victory isn't in destroying your enemies, but in refusing to let them destroy you. The cursor blinked, waiting. Outside, a siren wailed, then faded. The city moved on, indifferent to personal dramas and private wars. I began to type.
Sign the papers, Mila. You don't want to make this ugly, do you? Think about our boys. Ethan's words cut through me like a knife, his cruel smirk twisting the face I once loved. I stare at the divorce papers in front of me, my hands trembling as I try to process the betrayal and heartache that have led me to this moment. Just a few years ago, I was a dedicated pediatric nurse, finding fulfillment in my career, but feeling the pressure to settle down as my friends and younger sister started their own families. That all changed when I reconnected with Ethan Hawthorne at a friend's wedding. The groom's charismatic cousin swept me off my feet as we danced, sparks flying between us. Our whirlwind romance led to a quick engagement and a beautiful wedding. I thought I had found my happily ever after, especially when I discovered I was pregnant shortly after. But the cracks in our relationship began to show when the ultrasound revealed we were having twin boys. Ethan seemed distant about the news, but I chalked it up to nerves. My sister Nadia, a successful corporate lawyer, expressed reservations about Ethan's character, but she supported me nonetheless. When our boys, Liam and Lucas, were born healthy, Ethan put on a show of joy for the family, but I could sense his insincerity. At home, the twins' needs overwhelmed Ethan. He stayed out late, claiming work, leaving me alone to care for our babies. One night, I found suspicious texts on his phone from a contact named Jess. When I confronted him, he snatched the phone away, yelling at me for invading his privacy. On extended maternity leave, I struggled to manage the twins and household chores without Ethan's help. He berated me for the messy house and simple meals, with demanding that I cater to his needs despite his lack of support. I suggested couples therapy, but he scoffed, blaming me for our problems and refusing to attend. The final straw came when Ethan arrived home late, reeking of alcohol and perfume. I confronted him about the affair and his neglect of our family. He gaslighted me, calling me paranoid and ungrateful. Then he served me the divorce papers, sneering that I was nothing without him. Shocked and hurt, I signed the papers with shaking hands. I gathered Liam and Lucas, my heart breaking as I realized the family I had dreamed of was crumbling before my eyes. With nowhere else to turn, I took the twins to stay with Nadia. Ethan, enraged by my departure, vowed to destroy me. As I sit in Nadia's guest room, the weight of my shattered dreams pressing down on me, I know I must find the strength to fight for my boys and myself. I cannot let Ethan's cruelty and betrayal define me. With Nadia by my side, I vow to expose the truth and build a better life for Liam, Lucas, and myself, no matter the cost. Ethan and I were married in a beautiful ceremony just a few months after we first met. Our whirlwind romance had been the talk of the town, and I couldn't have been happier as I walked down the aisle, my eyes locked on the man I believed to be my soulmate. Shortly after our wedding, I discovered I was pregnant. Ethan seemed thrilled at first, but his enthusiasm waned when the ultrasound revealed we were having twin boys. 2 at once? That's going to be a handful, he muttered, his brow furrowed. I brushed off his reaction, chalking it up to nerves about the responsibility of fatherhood. My sister Nadia, however, wasn't so easily convinced. "I don't like the way he reacted to the news," she confided in me over lunch one day. "It's like he's not fully committed to this family." I defended Ethan, assuring Nadia that he was just adjusting to the idea of being a father. He'll come around," I said, placing a hand on my growing belly. "He loves me, and he'll love our boys just as much." Nadia pursed her lips, her concern evident. "I hope you're right, Mila, but if he ever does anything to hurt you or those babies, he'll have me to answer to." When Liam and Lucas were born, Ethan put on a show of joy for our family and friends who came to visit us in the hospital. He cooed over the babies and posed for pictures, but I couldn't shake the feeling that his happiness was a facade. At home, Ethan's true colors began to show. He grew increasingly impatient with the twins' needs, often leaving me alone to care for them while he stayed out late, claiming to be working. "I'm the one providing for this family," he snapped when I confronted him about his absence. "You should be grateful I'm working so hard." I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, but my suspicions grew when I found a string of texts on his phone from a woman named Jess. The messages were flirtatious and suggestive, hinting at a relationship that went beyond the professional. "Who is she?" I demanded, holding up the phone with a shaking hand. Ethan's face twisted in anger as he snatched the device from my grasp. "You have no right to go through my phone," he yelled, his voice rising to a terrifying volume. "I'm not doing anything wrong. You're just being paranoid." Tears streamed down my face as I watched him storm out of the room, leaving me alone with our crying babies. I tried to convince myself that he was telling the truth, that I was overreacting, but deep down, I knew our marriage was in trouble. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan's behavior only worsened. He berated me for the state of the house, complaining about the laundry piling up and the simple meals I prepared. "Can't you handle anything?" he sneered, his words cutting me to the core. "I work all day and this is what I come home to?" I suggested couples therapy, desperate to save our marriage, but Ethan scoffed at the idea. "We don't need therapy," he said, rolling his eyes. "You're the one with the problem, not me." I felt myself shrinking under the weight of his cruelty, my self-esteem crumbling with each passing day. I had given up so much for this man, for our family, and now I was left with nothing but the shattered remains of my dreams. But the final blow came on that fateful night when Ethan served me the divorce papers, his smirk a twisted reminder of the love I had once believed in. As I sat in Nadia's guest room, my boys sleeping soundly beside me, I knew I had to find the strength to fight back, not just for myself, but for the innocent lives that depended on me. The day Liam and Lucas were born was supposed to be the happiest of my life. As I held my beautiful baby boys in my arms, I felt a rush of love and protectiveness that I had never experienced before. Ethan stood beside me, a wide grin on his face as he posed for pictures with our newborn sons. But even in that moment of joy, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Ethan's smile seemed too perfect, too practiced, like he was putting on a show for the cameras. When our family and friends left the hospital room, his demeanor changed almost instantly. "You better hope they start sleeping through the night soon," he grumbled, his eyes fixed on his phone screen. "I'm not going to be able to function at work if I'm up all night with crying babies." I tried to brush off his comment, reminding myself that he was just adjusting to the reality of fatherhood. But as we settled into life at home with the twins, Ethan's lack of support became increasingly apparent. Night after night, I found myself alone in the nursery, bouncing fussy babies and changing endless diapers while Ethan stayed out late, claiming to be working. When he did come home, he reeked of alcohol and perfume, stumbling into bed without so much as a goodnight kiss. I confronted him about his behavior one evening, my voice shaking with exhaustion and frustration. "I need your help, Ethan. I can't do this all on my own." He rolled his eyes, his words slurring slightly. "You're their mother, Mila. It's your job to take care of them. I'm the one who has to go out and provide for this family." Tears stung my eyes as I watched him stagger off to bed, leaving me alone once again with our crying sons. I knew I couldn't continue like this, but I didn't know where to turn. That's when I found the texts from Jess. My heart dropped as I scrolled through the flirtatious messages, the suggestive emojis, and late-night meetups. When Ethan caught me with his phone, His reaction was explosive. "You're just a paranoid, ungrateful bitch," he screamed, his face contorted with rage. "I work my ass off for this family, and this is how you repay me? By snooping through my phone and accusing me of cheating?" I tried to stand my ground, but his words cut me to the core. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was just being paranoid. I apologized profusely, promising to trust him more and be a better wife. But even as I said the words, I knew they were a lie. I knew in my heart that Ethan was cheating on me, that he had no interest in being a father to our boys. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to leave him. I had invested so much in this marriage, in this family. I couldn't just walk away. So I stayed, pouring all my energy into caring for Liam and Lucas, while Ethan continued to neglect us. I made excuses for his behavior, convincing myself that he was just stressed from work, that he would come around eventually. But the breaking point came on that fateful night when he served me the divorce papers, his cruel smirk a reminder of all the pain he had inflicted on me. As I sat in Nadia's guest room, my boys sleeping soundly beside me, I knew I had to take action. I picked up my phone and dialed Nadia's number, my hands shaking with a mixture of fear and determination. "I need your help," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I can't let Ethan get away with this. I won't let him destroy our family." Nadia's response was immediate and unwavering. "I'm here for you, Mila. We'll make him pay for what he's done, I promise." As I hung up the phone, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but with my sister by my side, I was ready to fight for the life I deserved, for the future my boys deserved. Ethan had no idea what was coming for him. My extended maternity leave felt more like a prison sentence than a blessing. Every day, I found myself drowning in a sea of dirty diapers, spit-up stains, and endless crying. Ethan's absence was a constant ache, a reminder of the support and love I so desperately craved. On the rare occasions he did come home, it was only to criticize and belittle me. "The house is a mess, Mila," he sneered, kicking aside a basket of unfolded laundry. "Can't you manage to keep things clean while I'm out working to support this family?" I bit my tongue, fighting back tears as I tried to explain the challenges of caring for 2 infants on my own. "I'm doing the best I can, Ethan. It's not easy when you're never here to help." He scoffed, rolling his eyes in disgust. "You think my job is easy? I'm out there busting my ass to provide for you and those kids. The least you could do is have dinner ready when I get home." I glanced at the clock, noting that it was well past 9 p.m. "I did have dinner ready, hours ago, but you never came home." Ethan's face twisted in anger, his voice rising to a terrifying volume. "I was working late, Mila. You know how important my job is, but apparently that doesn't matter to you. All you care about is yourself and those damn babies." I recoiled as if he had slapped me, my heart shattering into a million pieces. How could he say such cruel things about our children, about me? I had given up everything for this family, and this was how he repaid me? In a desperate attempt to salvage our marriage, I suggested couples therapy. "Maybe talking to someone could help us work through these issues," I pleaded, my voice trembling. "We can't go on like this, Ethan." He laughed, a cold, harsh sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Therapy? You think some shrink is going to fix this mess? The only problem here is you, Mila. You're weak, pathetic, and ungrateful. I don't need therapy, and I sure as hell don't need you." With that, he stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him with such force that it rattled the walls. I collapsed onto the couch, sobs racking my body as I tried to process the cruel words he had hurled at me. How had I let things get this bad? How had I allowed myself to be treated like this, to be so utterly broken by the man I had once loved with all my heart? As I sat there, surrounded by the chaos of my life, I knew I had to make a change. I couldn't continue to live like this, to subject my boys to this toxic environment. They deserved better. I deserved better. With shaking hands, I reached for my phone and dialed Nadia's number. "I need your help," I whispered, my voice hoarse from crying. "I can't do this anymore. I need to leave him." Nadia's response was immediate and filled with a fierce protectiveness that brought fresh tears to my eyes. "I'm on my way, Mila. We'll get you and the boys out of there tonight. You're not alone in this." As I hung up the phone, I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in months. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, that Ethan wouldn't let me go without a fight, But with my sister by my side, I was ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. I looked down at my sleeping boys, their innocent faces a reminder of all that I had to fight for. "I'm sorry," I whispered, brushing a gentle kiss across their foreheads. "I'm sorry I let things get this bad, but I promise, from now on, I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe, to give you the life you deserve." With a newfound sense of determination, I began to pack our bags, ready to leave behind the shattered remains of my marriage and start anew. Ethan had broken me, but he wouldn't break me forever. I was ready to rise from the ashes, stronger than ever before. The night Ethan came home late, reeking of alcohol and another woman's perfume, was the night my world completely shattered. I had been up for hours pacing the living room with a fussy Liam in my arms, while Lucas slept fitfully in his crib. When the front door finally slammed open, I felt a rush of relief, followed immediately by a sinking dread. Ethan stumbled into the room, his eyes bloodshot and his shirt wrinkled. He barely glanced at me as he made his way to the kitchen, rummaging through the fridge for a beer. "Where have you been?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and fear. "I've been trying to call you all night." He shrugged, popping open the can and taking a long swig. "Out. Had some work stuff to take care of," I scoffed, shifting Liam to my other hip. "Work stuff? Is that what you call screwing your secretary these days?" Ethan's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing in fury. "What the hell are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the texts, Ethan, the late nights, the perfume on your clothes. I'm not an idiot. I know you're cheating on me." He slammed the beer can down on the counter, his face contorting with rage. "You don't know shit, Mila. You're just a paranoid, crazy bitch who can't handle the fact that I have a life outside of changing diapers and wiping snotty noses." Tears stung my eyes as I recoiled from his words, but I refused to back down. "I'm not crazy, Ethan. I know what you're doing, and I won't stand for it anymore. I want a divorce." Ethan laughed, a cold, cruel sound that sent shivers down my spine. "A divorce? You really think you can leave me? You're nothing without me, Mila. You're just a pathetic, stay-at-home mom with no skills and no prospects. Good luck trying to support yourself and those brats on your own." With that, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a stack of papers, tossing them onto the coffee table with a sneer. "But if that's what you want, then fine. Sign the papers, Mila. I'm done with you and this whole fucking family." I stared at the divorce papers, my heart shattering into a million pieces. How had it come to this? How had the man I loved, the father of my children, become such a monster? With shaking hands, I set Liam down in his playpen and reached for a pen. As much as it hurt, I knew I had to do this. I couldn't let Ethan continue to destroy me, to destroy our family. I signed the papers quickly, my vision blurred with tears. When I was done, I looked up at Ethan, my voice barely above a whisper. "I hope you're happy now. You've ruined everything." He smirked, snatching the papers from my hand. "I'll be happy when I'm rid of you and those little bastards. Good luck, Mila. You're going to need it." With that, he stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him with such force that it rattled the walls. I collapsed onto the couch, sobs racking my body as I tried to process what had just happened. How had I let things get this bad? How had I allowed myself to be so utterly broken by the man I had once loved with all my heart? As I sat there, surrounded by the shattered remains of my life, I knew I had to get out. I couldn't stay in this house, in this toxic environment, for a moment longer. With trembling hands, I gathered up Liam and Lucas, packing a few essentials into a diaper bag. Then I called Nadia, my voice hoarse with tears. "I need a place to stay. Ethan and we're done." He served me with divorce papers. Nadia's response was immediate and filled with a fierce protectiveness that brought fresh tears to my eyes. "Come stay with me, Mila. You and the boys are always welcome here. We'll figure this out together." As I hung up the phone, I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in months. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, that Ethan wouldn't let me go without a fight. But with my sister by my side, I was ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. I looked down at my sleeping boys, their innocent faces a reminder of all that I had to fight for. "I'm sorry," I whispered, brushing a gentle kiss across their foreheads. "I'm sorry I let things get this bad, but I promise, from now on, I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe, to give you the life you deserve." With a newfound sense of determination, I gathered up our bags and headed out into the night, ready to leave behind the shattered remains of my marriage and start anew. Ethan had broken me, but he wouldn't break me forever. I was ready to rise from the ashes, stronger than ever before. Nadia's apartment felt like a safe haven after the chaos and heartbreak of my shattered marriage. As I settled the twins into the spare room, I couldn't help but feel a wave of gratitude for my sister's unwavering support. "I'm so sorry, Mila," she said, pulling me into a tight hug. "I can't believe Ethan would do this to you, to your family." I choked back a sob, burying my face in her shoulder. "I don't know what to do, Nadia. He's threatening to take the boys away from me. He says I'm an unfit mother." Nadia pulled back, her eyes blazing with determination. "He's not going to get away with this, Mila. We're going to fight him, and we're going to win." Over the next few days, Nadia helped me find a divorce lawyer and gather evidence of Ethan's infidelity and verbal abuse. She even managed to track down his mistress, Jessica, who agreed to testify on my behalf. But Ethan wasn't going down without a fight. He hired a ruthless divorce attorney, a man with a reputation for destroying his opponents in court, and he wasn't afraid to play dirty. "I have some news," my lawyer said grimly, sliding a stack of papers across the table. "Ethan is seeking full custody of the twins. He's claiming that you're an unstable, unfit mother." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. How could he do this? How could he try to take my boys away from me? Nadia placed a comforting hand on my shoulder, her voice fierce with determination. "He's not going to win, Mila. We have the truth on our side, and I'm going to make sure the whole world knows what kind of man Ethan really is." As the court date approached, I felt like I was living in a constant state of fear and anxiety. Every time I looked at Liam and Lucas, I couldn't help but imagine a future where they were ripped away from me, forced to live with a man who had no love for them. But Nadia refused to let me give up hope. She worked tirelessly on my case, gathering evidence and preparing witnesses. And when the day of the trial finally arrived, she was right by my side, holding my hand as we walked into the courtroom. Ethan sat on the other side of the room, his face a mask of cold indifference. But as Nadia presented our case, I could see the cracks beginning to form in his facade. She called witness after witness, each one painting a damning picture of Ethan's character. His mistress, Jessica, took the stand, tearfully admitting to their affair and the cruel way he had spoken about me and the twins. "He said he never wanted kids," she said, her voice trembling. "He said they were just a burden, holding him back from the life he really wanted." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as I listened to her words. How could I have ever loved a man who saw our children as nothing more than a burden? But the final nail in Ethan's coffin came when Nadia presented the judge with a stack of financial documents, proving that he had been hiding assets and lying about his income in an attempt to avoid paying child support. The judge's face hardened as he reviewed the evidence, his voice cold with contempt. "Mr. Hawthorne, it is clear to me that you have no regard for the well-being of your children or the sanctity of your marriage vows. I am granting Mrs. Nowak full custody of the twins, as well as generous child support payments to ensure their future stability." Ethan's face contorted with rage as the verdict was read, his fists clenching at his sides. "You'll pay for this," he hissed, his eyes locked on mine. "Both of you. I'll make sure of it." But as I walked out of the courtroom, my boys in my arms and my sister by my side, I knew that his threats held no power over me anymore. I had won. I had taken back my life, my dignity, and my future, and I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them with the same strength and determination that had carried me through the darkest moments of my life. Ethan had tried to break me, but he had only made me stronger. And I was ready to show the world just how unbreakable I really was. The courtroom battle had been brutal, but in the end, justice prevailed. As the judge announced his decision granting me full custody of Liam and Lucas and ordering Ethan to pay generous child support, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It was finally over. I had won. But Ethan wasn't ready to accept defeat. As we walked out of the courthouse, he lunged towards me, his face contorted with rage. "You think you've won?" he snarled, his voice dripping with venom. "You haven't seen anything yet. I'll destroy you, Mila. I'll make sure you never see those brats again." Nadia stepped between us, her eyes flashing with anger. Back off, Ethan. You've lost. It's time for you to accept it and move on. But Ethan wasn't listening. He shoved Nadia aside, his hands reaching for me. You're nothing without me, Mila. You're just a pathetic, worthless. Before he could finish his sentence, a security guard grabbed him by the arm, pulling him away from me. That's enough, sir. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Ethan struggled against the guard's grip, his eyes never leaving mine. This isn't over, Mila. I'll make you pay for what you've done. I swear it. As he was dragged away, I felt a shiver run down my spine. I knew Ethan wasn't one to make idle threats. He would stop at nothing to get his revenge, but I refused to let fear control me. I had come too far, fought too hard, to let him win now. With Nadia by my side, I knew I could face whatever challenges lay ahead. Over the next few weeks, I focused on rebuilding my life. I found a small apartment for the boys and me, started looking for a job, and began the process of healing from the trauma of my marriage. But even as I tried to move forward, I couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan was still out there, plotting his next move. And I was right. One evening, as I was putting the twins to bed, I heard a knock at the door. Assuming it was Nadia, I opened it without checking the peephole, but instead of my sister's smiling face, I found myself staring into the cold, calculating eyes of Ethan's divorce attorney. "Mrs. Nowak," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "I'm afraid I have some bad news. Your ex-husband has filed an appeal claiming that the judge's decision was biased and unfair. He's seeking to overturn the custody ruling and have the boys placed in his care." I felt my heart drop to my stomach, my hands trembling at my sides. But he can't do that. The judge's decision was final." The lawyer smirked, his eyes glinting with malice. "Nothing is ever final in family court, Mrs. Nowak, and with my help, your ex-husband is confident that he can convince the court to see things his way." I slammed the door in his face, my mind racing with panic. How could this be happening? How could Ethan still have the power to hurt me, even after everything he had done? I called Nadia immediately, my voice shaking with fear. "He's trying to take the boys away from me, Nadia. He's filed an appeal." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, followed by a string of colorful curses. "That bastard! He just doesn't know when to quit." "What are we going to do, Nadia? I can't lose my boys. I can't." "You're not going to lose them, Mila. I won't let that happen." Nadia's voice was fierce with determination. "I've been doing some digging into Ethan's past, and I think I may have found something that could help us. Something big." I felt a flicker of hope ignite in my chest. "What is it?" "I can't say too much over the phone, but let's just say that Ethan's not as squeaky clean as he'd like everyone to believe. And with the right evidence, we can make sure that he never comes near you or the boys again." As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of renewed strength coursing through my veins. Ethan may have thought he had the upper hand, but he had underestimated the power of a mother's love. And with Nadia by my side, I knew that I would stop at nothing to protect my children, no matter what the cost. Nadia's revelation about Ethan's shady past had given me a glimmer of hope, but I knew that taking him down wouldn't be easy. He was a master manipulator, always one step ahead of the game. But Nadia was determined to uncover the truth. She hired a private investigator, a former cop with a reputation for getting results, and what he found was even worse than I could have imagined. Ethan's been involved in some pretty sketchy business deals, Nadia told me, her face grim. Money laundering, tax fraud, you name it. He's been using his company as a front for illegal activities for years. I felt sick to my stomach as I listened to the details. How could I have been so blind? How could I have married a man capable of such deceit? But Nadia wasn't finished. "There's more," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "He's been embezzling money from his clients, stealing from the very people who trusted him with their investments." I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. "What are we going to do, Nadia? How can we prove any of this?" Nadia's eyes flashed with determination. "We're going to take this evidence to the authorities. We're going to make sure that Ethan pays for his crimes." And that's exactly what we did. Nadia compiled a dossier of evidence, including financial records, witness statements, and incriminating emails. She handed it over to the FBI, who launched a full-scale investigation into Ethan's business dealings. It didn't take long for the truth to come out. Ethan was arrested and charged with multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. His assets were frozen, his company was shut down, and he was facing the possibility of decades in prison. I watched the news coverage of his arrest with a mix of relief and sadness. A part of me still couldn't believe that the man I had once loved was capable of such evil. But another part of me knew that he had brought this upon himself. He had chosen greed and power over his own family, and now he was paying the price. With Ethan behind bars, I was finally able to move on with my life. I focused on my children, pouring all of my love and energy into giving them the stable, happy home they deserved. I went back to work as a pediatric nurse, finding joy and purpose in helping others. And as the years passed, I found myself thinking less and less about Ethan. He was a distant memory, a cautionary tale of what could happen when you let darkness into your heart. But even as I moved forward, I knew that I would never forget the lessons I had learned. I would never again let anyone treat me the way Ethan had. I would never again compromise my own happiness for the sake of someone else's ego. I was stronger now, wiser. I had survived the worst that life could throw at me, and I had come out the other side a better person for it. And then, one day, a letter arrived in the mail. It was from Ethan, written from his prison cell. I hesitated before opening it, my hands shaking with a mix of fear and curiosity. Inside, I found a single sheet of paper, covered in Ethan's familiar scrawl. "Mila," it read, "I know that I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. I know that I have caused you and our children unimaginable pain, but I want you to know that I am sorry. I am sorry for everything." I read the words over and over again, tears streaming down my face. A part of me wanted to believe him, to think that maybe, just maybe, he had changed, but I knew better now. I knew that Ethan's words were just that, words. They couldn't erase the damage he had done, the lives he had destroyed. I crumpled the letter in my fist and tossed it in the trash. I didn't need Ethan's apologies. I didn't need his remorse. I had everything I needed right here, in the smiling faces of my children, in the love and support of my family and friends. I had risen from the ashes of my broken marriage, stronger and more determined than ever before. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, I knew that I would face them with my head held high, secure in the knowledge that I was unbreakable.
The credit card statement trembled in my hands, each line item a dagger to my chest. 4 nights at the Grand Riviera Resort. 2 spa packages. Champagne service. All charged to an account I never knew existed. I'm Vanessa, and until 10 minutes ago, I thought I knew every detail of my husband's financial life. 15 years of marriage does that to you, or at least it should. But here I sat, in our tastefully decorated home office, staring at proof that Marcus had been living a different life entirely. "Darling, are you ready? Mother and father are expecting us in 20 minutes. Marcus's voice floated up from downstairs, perfectly casual, perfectly normal. I shoved the statement into my desk drawer, my heart hammering against my ribs. Just finishing up some work emails, I called back, amazed at how steady my voice sounded. The drive to his parents' house was excruciating. Marcus hummed along to the radio, one hand resting on my thigh like he hadn't just spent thousands at a luxury resort without my knowledge. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but Linda's weekly family dinner wasn't the place for that conversation. "There's my boy." Linda's shrill voice greeted us at the door. She wrapped Marcus in a tight embrace before turning to me with considerably less enthusiasm. "Vanessa, dear. That's an interesting choice of outfit." I glanced down at my perfectly appropriate black dress. "Thank you, Linda. You're looking well." George barely looked up from his newspaper as we entered the dining room. "Marcus, son, how's the firm treating you?" "Couldn't be better, Dad. Just landed the Peterson account last week." Linda beamed, arranging herself at the head of the table like a queen holding court. "I always knew you'd do wonderful things, darling. You get that from our side of the family." The familiar sting of her words barely registered tonight. I was too preoccupied with the resort charges, with the growing certainty that something was terribly wrong in my marriage. Speaking of wonderful things, Linda continued, fixing me with her razor-sharp gaze, any news you'd like to share with us, Vanessa? I knew exactly what she was asking. The same thing she asked every Sunday for the past decade. No, Linda. No grandchildren yet. Well, it's not too late to see a specialist. Though at your age. She let the sentence dangle, sharp and poisonous. Marcus squeezed my hand under the table, but it felt hollow. Everything felt hollow now. I wondered if he'd taken someone else to that resort, if that someone else could give Linda the grandchildren she so desperately wanted. More wine, dear. George offered, finally looking up from his paper. I nodded, grateful for the distraction. As I reached for the glass, my phone buzzed with an email notification. A receipt for a jewelry purchase, forwarded from Marcus's account to mine by mistake. A diamond pendant from Tiffany's, purchased the same weekend as the resort stay. I'd never received that pendant. The wine glass slipped from my fingers, shattering against Linda's pristine white tablecloth. Red liquid spread like blood across the fabric as Linda gasped in horror. I'm so sorry, I said, but I wasn't looking at the spill. I was looking at Marcus, at the flash of panic in his eyes when he noticed my phone in my hand. In that moment, I knew. I knew everything. Really, Vanessa, Linda sighed, dabbing at the spreading stain. This is why we can't have nice things. I smiled tightly, already planning my next move. You're right, Linda. Some things just aren't meant to last. The next morning, Marcus's side of the bed was cold. 3 a.m. Conference call with Tokyo, he'd said. The lie sat between us like a wall when he finally came home, briefcase in hand, cologne too fresh for someone who'd been up all night working. We need to talk, I said, watching him loosen his tie. Can it wait? I'm exhausted. He didn't meet my eyes, focusing instead on hanging up his jacket with precise movements. The Grand Riviera Resort. I kept my voice steady, measured. 4 nights, 2 spa packages, champagne service. His shoulders tensed for a fraction of a second before he turned, face perfectly composed. It was a business retreat. I thought I mentioned it. And the Tiffany pendant. A gift. For your birthday. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You weren't supposed to find out about that one. My birthday's in August, Marcus. You bought it in April. The silence stretched between us like a rubber band about to snap. His phone buzzed, and he reached for it automatically. Don't. My voice cracked. Don't you dare check that phone right now. He set it face down on the dresser. You're being paranoid, Vanessa. This obsession with my spending isn't healthy. Neither is lying to your wife. His expression hardened. I work 60 hours a week to maintain this lifestyle. I don't appreciate being interrogated in my own home. Your mother called earlier, I said, watching his face carefully. She mentioned meeting a lovely young woman at her charity luncheon. Someone she thinks would be perfect for your firm's marketing department. Mother needs to mind her own business. He loosened his tie further, a nervous tell I'd noticed years ago. Funny, she said the same thing about me last Sunday. Right after commenting on my biological clock. Again. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. You know how she gets. She's traditional, that's all. Traditional enough to play matchmaker while her son is still married. That's not fair. You're twisting things. I pulled out my laptop. Am I? Because I have some interesting emails here. Your mother seems very invested in your lunch meetings with this Rachel person. The color drained from his face. You hacked my email. You left yourself logged in. Sloppy, Marcus. Unlike the careful way you've been deleting your text messages every night. He crossed the room in 2 strides, slamming the laptop shut. Enough. This stops now. You're acting crazy. Crazy. I laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. Crazy is gaslighting your wife while your mother plays pimp. His hand gripped my arm, tight enough to hurt. Don't you dare talk about my mother that way. Or what, Marcus? You'll run to mommy. Tell her how your bitter, barren wife is making accusations. He released me like I'd burned him. I can't talk to you when you're like this. Like what? Honest? He grabbed his keys and jacket. I'm staying at the office tonight. Call me when you're ready to be rational. I watched him leave, listening to his car start up and pull away. My phone buzzed, a text from Linda. Darling, I hope you're not bothering Marcus with silly accusations. He works so hard, and stress isn't good for a man. Why don't you come over tomorrow? We can discuss your concerns. I stared at the message, imagining Linda's smug face as she typed it. She probably thought she was being clever, managing her son's marriage crisis. But she'd made a crucial mistake. I opened my laptop again, scrolling through Marcus's emails. There it was, a dinner reservation for tomorrow night. Grand Riviera Restaurant, table for 2, under the name R. Mitchell. Time to meet Rachel. I typed a quick reply to Linda, thank you for the invitation. You're right, we have so much to discuss. Let them think they had me cornered. Let them believe I was the hysterical wife, the bitter disappointment, the problem that needed solving. They had no idea what was coming. I picked up my phone and booked my own table at the Grand Riviera. Tomorrow night, their carefully constructed lies would begin to unravel, one thread at a time. Linda's pristine living room felt like a stage set, everything arranged just so. I sat across from her, watching steam rise from the china teacup she'd placed before me, untouched. Marcus tells me you've been emotional lately, she said, stirring honey into her own cup with practiced precision. Does he tell you everything, Linda? Her hand paused mid-stir. A son confides in his mother. It's natural. Natural. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the email I'd found last night. Like arranging lunch meetings between your married son and eligible young women. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. But her fingers tightened around the spoon. Rachel Mitchell. 28, marketing degree from Stanford, comes from old money. Your kind of people, right? Color rose in Linda's cheeks. She's a business associate. Nothing more. Really? Because these emails paint quite a different picture. I started reading aloud. Dear Rachel, Marcus mentioned how lovely your dinner was. I'm so pleased you two connected. He needs someone who understands his potential. Linda set her cup down with a sharp clink. You had no right to access private correspondence. Like you had no right to orchestrate my husband's affair. Affairs happen for a reason, Vanessa. Her voice turned silk smooth, poisonous. When a wife can't fulfill her basic duties. Basic duties. I laughed. You mean providing grandchildren? Tell me, did you interview Rachel about her fertility before setting her up with your son? That's enough. Linda stood, hands trembling. I won't sit here and be accused. Sit down. My voice cut through her protest like a blade. We're not finished. Something in my tone made her sink back into her chair. I pulled up another email. Here's a good one. You forwarding Rachel's resume to Marcus's firm. Oh, and look, dinner reservations at the Grand Riviera, made through your personal assistant. The same weekend Marcus was supposedly at a business retreat. You're twisting things to fit your paranoid narrative. Am I? I opened the photo gallery on my phone. These were taken last night. Marcus and Rachel, looking very professional. I especially liked the one where he's kissing her in the parking lot. Linda's face went ash white. You followed them. I learned from the best. Isn't that how you caught your first husband cheating? You told that story at Christmas 3 years ago, remember? After your third martini. She reached for the phone, but I pulled it back. What do you want? Want? I smiled. I want you to experience what it feels like when your carefully constructed world falls apart. Starting with your charity foundation's annual gala next week. You wouldn't dare. The foundation's reputation means everything to you. Just like your reputation in the country club, your position on the hospital board, your perfect family image. Her hands shook as she reached for her tea. Marcus won't let you destroy everything we've built. Marcus won't have a choice. Unless what? I leaned forward. Unless you confess everything to George. Tonight. Tell him how you orchestrated your son's affair, how you've been manipulating everyone around you. Let your husband see who you really are. He'll never believe you over me. He might believe the evidence. Every email, every reservation, every manipulative little message you've sent. I have copies of everything. Linda's facade cracked. Please. I only wanted what was best for Marcus. No, you wanted control. And now you're losing it. I stood, smoothing my skirt. You have until midnight to tell George. After that, everything goes public. Every sordid detail. You'll destroy Marcus too, she whispered. He destroyed himself when he chose to follow Mommy's script instead of being honest with his wife. I walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and Linda. That charity luncheon next week. I'd recommend wearing waterproof mascara. Tears tend to flow when reputations crumble. The door closed behind me with a satisfying click, leaving Linda alone with her cold tea and colder reality. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus asking where I was. I didn't reply. Let him worry. Let him wonder. The game was changing, and for once, I held all the cards. The Grand Riviera's bar felt like neutral territory, though my hands shook as I ordered a martini. Rachel Mitchell was even younger in person, her designer dress and perfectly styled hair screaming, trying too hard. She sat 2 tables away, checking her phone every few minutes, waiting for Marcus. I watched her through the mirror behind the bar, noting how she touched her hair nervously, straightened her silverware, practiced her smile. God, I'd been that young once. That naive. My phone buzzed, a text from Linda. George wants to know if you'll be at dinner Sunday. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I deleted it without responding. The countdown to midnight was ticking, and Linda's world was about to implode. But first, this. Rachel checked her watch again. Marcus was 20 minutes late, unusual for him. Unless. My phone buzzed again. Marcus, working late. Don't wait up. I smiled into my martini. Of course. Linda had warned him about my visit, and he'd called Rachel to cancel. But she hadn't gotten the message, which meant. Excuse me, I said, approaching her table. Are you Rachel? She looked up, startled. Yes. I'm so sorry, but Marcus asked me to let you know he can't make it tonight. Emergency at the office. I sat down uninvited. I'm Vanessa. His wife. The color drained from her face. His. But he said. He told me he was separated. Did Linda tell you that too? When she arranged your first accidental meeting at her charity luncheon. Rachel's hands trembled as she reached for her water. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone, sliding it across the table. The resort weekend in April. The Tiffany pendant. All those lunch meetings Linda arranged. Did you really think you were the first? He said Linda was just being kind, helping him transition. Her voice cracked. Oh God. Linda's never kind without an agenda. She did the same thing with Marcus's first wife. Rachel's head snapped up. First wife. He never mentioned Catherine. Let me guess, he told you I was his only marriage, that I was cold, career-focused, couldn't give him children. Tears welled in her eyes. He said you were separated, focusing on your career in Europe. I laughed, the sound hollow. I haven't left the country in 3 years. Would you like to see this morning's breakfast dishes in our sink? I think I'm going to be sick. She stood abruptly, but I caught her wrist. Wait. There's something you need to see first. I pulled up the emails between Linda and Marcus, discussing Rachel like she was a prized breeding mare. Her face went from pale to green as she read. Perfect childbearing hips, she quoted, voice shaking. Good family background. They were planning. Linda wants grandchildren. You're young, fertile, and moldable. The perfect replacement. I need to go. She grabbed her purse, then paused. Why are you showing me this? Because you deserve to know what you're dealing with. And because I need your help. My help. Linda's charity gala is next week. Every social connection she's ever cultivated will be there. Including the board members of your company. Understanding dawned in her eyes. You want me to tell the truth. About everything. Unless you'd prefer to be the other woman in their carefully scripted drama. She sat back down, hands steady now. Tell me what you need me to do. My phone buzzed again. Linda, Marcus says you're not home. Whatever you're planning, remember who has more to lose. I showed Rachel the message. That's where she's wrong. They're the ones with everything to lose. We're just the collateral damage they never considered. When do we start? I smiled, feeling the pieces fall into place. We already have. Linda's facing her own crisis tonight. By tomorrow, Marcus will be scrambling to contain the damage. And next week, we show them what happens when they underestimate the women they thought they could control. Rachel raised her water glass. To karma. I clinked my martini against it. To karma. And to the truth. George's study smelled of leather and cigar smoke, a sanctuary I'd never been invited into before. He sat behind his mahogany desk, reading glasses perched on his nose, examining the stack of emails I'd printed out. These are serious allegations, Vanessa. His voice remained steady, betraying nothing. They're not allegations, George. They're facts. He removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Linda claims you're having some sort of breakdown. Of course she does. Did she tell you about her midnight confession? She was distraught. Claimed you were blackmailing her. I pulled out my phone, playing the recording I'd made outside their bedroom window last night. Linda's voice, thick with tears, confessing everything to George. His muffled responses. The sound of breaking glass. You recorded that without consent. Like how your wife recorded Catherine's private conversations before Marcus's first divorce. His head snapped up. How do you know about Catherine? I do my research, George. Did you know Linda was behind that divorce too? Another daughter-in-law who couldn't provide grandchildren fast enough. The door opened, and Marcus burst in, Linda close behind. "Father, don't listen to." He froze when he saw me. "Hello, darling," I said. "How was your late meeting last night?" Linda's hand gripped Marcus's arm. "George, she's trying to destroy our family." "No, Linda. You did that yourself." I turned to Marcus. "Rachel says hello, by the way. She's particularly interested in those emails about her childbearing potential." Marcus went pale. "You talked to Rachel?" "We had quite the conversation. About your separation in Europe, your lonely nights, your manipulative wife." I smiled. "She's very eager to share her side of the story at the charity gala." "You wouldn't dare," Linda hissed. "Watch me." I stood, smoothing my skirt. Unless what?" Marcus stepped forward. "Unless you sign these." I pulled out divorce papers, already marked with tabs. Full disclosure of assets, no contest, and a public statement about the affair. "That would ruin his career," Linda protested. "Better his career than your entire social empire." I turned to George. "Did you know your wife's charity foundation has been misappropriating funds? The paper trail is fascinating." George's face hardened. "Linda. She's lying." But Linda's voice shook. "Am I?" "Check the foundation's accounts. Specifically the transfers to consulting fees paid to shell companies owned by your tennis instructor." The color drained from Linda's face. "You have until the gala," I said, walking toward the door. "Sign the papers, admit the affair, and the foundation stays clean. Otherwise." I shrugged. "I hear the IRS is very interested in charitable fraud." "Vanessa, wait." Marcus reached for me, but I stepped back. "Don't touch me. Ever again." I met his eyes. "You know what's funny? I actually believed you loved me once. But you never did you? I was just the first replacement your mother chose." "That's not true. Save it for Rachel. Or whoever comes after her." I turned to Linda. "The gala's in 3 days. Tick-tock." George's voice stopped me at the door. "Why now, Vanessa? Why not just walk away?" I looked back at them, this family that had suffocated me for 15 years. "Because some people need to learn that actions have consequences. Even the ones who think they're above them." Linda made a small, broken sound. Marcus stared at the floor. George just watched me, something like respect flickering in his eyes. 3 days, I reminded them. "Oh, and Linda. I'd start calling your society friends. I hear damage control works better in advance." I closed the door behind me, letting their panicked voices fade as I walked away. My phone buzzed, Rachel confirming our lunch meeting tomorrow to finalize the gala plans. Everything was falling into place. But as I drove home, my hands shook on the steering wheel. Was I becoming just like Linda, manipulating people's lives for my own ends? Or was this justice, pure and simple? The answer, I realized, probably lay somewhere in between. But it was too late to turn back now. The avalanche had started, and we were all going to get buried in the aftermath. The charity gala glittered with false smiles and designer gowns. I adjusted my black dress, the one Marcus always said made me look severe, and watched Linda work the room, her laugh just a touch too bright. Her gestures slightly too sharp. Rachel stood near the bar, looking younger than ever in pale pink. Our eyes met briefly before she looked away, and my stomach twisted. Something wasn't right. "Quite the turnout," Marcus said behind me. I hadn't heard him approach. "Shouldn't you be with your date?" I nodded toward Rachel. "She's not my date." Not anymore. His voice was steady. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? The setup at the restaurant, the recorded confession, all of it. Ice spread through my veins. What did you do? Nothing. Just showed Rachel some interesting emails between you and Catherine. Catherine? The name hit like a slap. How did you? You're not the only one who can hack accounts, Vanessa. Catherine was quite helpful once I explained how you'd been using her story to manipulate Rachel. Across the room, Linda caught my eye and smiled. Not her usual social smile, but something predatory. The Foundation's books are clean now, Marcus continued. Mother made sure of that. And Rachel's decided not to speak tonight after all. Something about not wanting to be part of your vendetta. You're lying. But Rachel wouldn't meet my eyes anymore. Am I? Check your phone. Those emails you saved. The recordings. Funny how technology can fail at the worst moments. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. Files corrupted. Emails deleted. Everything gone. Did you really think we'd let you destroy this family? Linda appeared beside us, champagne in hand. Oh, darling. You never did understand how things work in our world. Ladies and gentlemen, George's voice boomed from the podium. If I could have your attention. This was wrong. This was all wrong. The speech was supposed to be Linda's, where Rachel would interrupt with the truth about the affair. It's with great sadness, George continued, that I must address certain rumors. My daughter-in-law, Vanessa, has been struggling with some personal issues. The room blurred. Personal issues. The same words they'd used about Catherine. About Marcus's first wife, who disappeared into a private treatment facility after her own accusations. We hope you'll respect our privacy during this difficult time, George finished. And support Marcus as he helps his wife through this challenging period. Applause filled the room. Sympathetic looks turned my way. Linda squeezed my arm, nails digging in. The car's waiting outside, she whispered. Unless you'd prefer we discuss your mental health more publicly. You can't do this. We already have. Marcus's hand pressed against my lower back, steering me toward the exit. The facility's very discreet. Mother used her hospital board connections to arrange everything. I'll tell everyone the truth. Who would believe you? Linda's voice was silk smooth. The bitter wife, imagining affairs, hacking emails, making recordings. Threatening a respected charity foundation. Marcus tried so hard to help you, but sometimes professional care is the only answer. Rachel watched us pass, guilt and relief warring on her face. She'd chosen their side, their story. Just like Catherine probably had. Outside, a black car idled. The driver held the door open, expression carefully blank. Don't make a scene, Marcus murmured. Think of your career. Your reputation. For a moment, I saw it all clearly, the weeks of isolation ahead. The carefully documented episodes, the sympathetic doctors who'd listened to Linda's version of events. Just like they had with Catherine. I looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and saw something I'd missed before, fear. Not of me, but of them. Of stepping out of the role they'd created for him. You're right, I said softly. No scene. I took one step toward the car, then another. Linda's grip loosened. Marcus relaxed slightly. That's when I started screaming. My scream shattered the polite facade of the gala like a brick through glass. Guests froze, champagne flutes suspended mid-toast. Through the massive windows, I could see phones coming out, recording. Perfect. Someone call security, Linda hissed, but I was already walking back inside, Marcus and the waiting car forgotten. Ladies and gentlemen, I called out, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. I'd like to make a toast of my own. Vanessa, don't. Marcus grabbed my arm, but I shook him off. To family, I said, snatching a champagne flute from a nearby tray. Specifically, to the Hamilton family tradition of making inconvenient wives disappear. Linda surged forward, but George held her back. Smart man. You're unwell, Marcus said loudly, for the benefit of the watching crowd. Let me take you home. Home. Like you took Catherine home. I turned to the crowd. Did any of you know Catherine? Marcus's first wife. The one who had a nervous breakdown after failing to provide an heir. Murmurs rippled through the room. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. That's enough, Linda snapped, but I saw the fear in her eyes. I thought it was enough too, when I found proof of Marcus's affair. But then I found something better. I pulled out my phone. Catherine sends her regards, by the way. From Seattle, where she's been practicing law for the past 8 years. Under her maiden name. Marcus went pale. You're lying. Am I? Because she had quite a story to tell about her time in the Hamilton family's preferred treatment facility. The same one you had arranged for me tonight. Security. Linda called out, but no one moved. Oh, and Rachel. I turned to where she stood, frozen by the bar. Show them what Marcus gave you last week. Rachel's hand went to her throat, to the Tiffany pendant there. The same design Catherine had described in her email. He gives it to all his wives, I continued. Right before they become inconvenient. Don't worry, you can keep it. Consider it payment for your performance tonight. This is slander, Linda sputtered, but her carefully crafted mask was cracking. Is it slander when there's proof? I turned to George. Check your phone, George. I just forwarded you some interesting documents about the foundation's finances. The real ones, not the sanitized version Linda showed you. George pulled out his phone, his expression darkening as he read. You see, I continued, addressing the crowd, the Hamilton family has a system. Find a suitable wife, pressure her for children, and when she fails, arrange for her replacement. All while funneling foundation money through shell companies to keep everyone quiet. Security. Linda screamed again, but this time several board members raised their hands to stop the approaching guards. We'd like to see those documents, one of them said quietly. Marcus stepped forward, desperation in his eyes. Vanessa, please. We can work this out. Like you worked it out with Catherine. I smiled. Check your email, darling. She's filing an affidavit about her time in that facility. Her lawyer copied the medical board, the police, and every newspaper in the state. The room erupted in chaos. Board members huddled in corners, phones out. Linda collapsed into a chair, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. George stood absolutely still, staring at his phone with growing horror. You've destroyed everything, Marcus whispered. No, I corrected him. You did that yourself. I just turned on the lights. I walked to the podium, where George's champagne sat abandoned. One final toast, I called out. To Catherine Hamilton, wherever she is. May she sleep better knowing the truth is finally out. Rachel appeared at my side, slipping off the Tiffany pendant. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I should have. Keep it, I said. Sell it. Buy something that's actually yours. As I walked out, I heard Linda's wail of despair, followed by the distinct sound of George's disgusted voice. How long have you been stealing from our foundation? I stepped into the warm night air, leaving chaos in my wake. My phone buzzed, a text from Catherine, well done. Coffee sometime. I smiled, hailing a cab. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just exposing the truth, it's making sure everyone else can see it too. The movers worked efficiently, boxing up 15 years of marriage while I sorted through what remained. Each item felt lighter now, stripped of the weight of pretense. My wedding china, Linda's passive-aggressive Christmas gifts, the photos of perfect family dinners, all categorized into keep, donate, or trash. My phone buzzed with another news alert about the Hamilton Foundation scandal. George had resigned from the board. Linda faced criminal charges for financial fraud. Marcus's firm had placed him on indefinite leave pending investigation. These photos. The mover held up our wedding album. Trash. A knock at the door made me turn. Rachel stood there, still wearing that Tiffany pendant. I sold the rest of the jewelry, she said, stepping inside. Donated the money to domestic violence shelters. Good choice. She fingered the pendant. I kept this one as a reminder of how easy it is to become part of someone else's game without realizing it. The movers carried out another box, leaving us alone in the half-empty room. Catherine called, Rachel said. She's starting a support group. For women who've survived situations like this. Survived. The word tasted strange. Is that what we did? You tell me. You're the one who brought it all down. I looked around the stripped walls, remembering Linda's first dinner party here, how she'd rearranged my furniture without asking. Claiming she knew best. I thought revenge would feel different, I admitted. More satisfying. Doesn't it? It feels. I searched for the word. Unfinished. Rachel nodded toward the window. Outside, a familiar black car idled. Marcus? I asked. He's been sitting there for an hour. Says he needs to talk to you. I walked to the window. Marcus looked up, our eyes meeting across the distance. For a moment, I saw him clearly, not the monster I'd made him out to be, not the perfect son Linda had shaped, but something in between. A man who'd let others write his story for so long, he'd forgotten how to write his own. Are you going to talk to him? Rachel asked. No. I turned away from the window. His story isn't mine anymore. My phone buzzed again, Catherine, sending an address for coffee tomorrow. Below it, she'd written, Welcome to the after. The after. Not the end, not a new beginning, just after. Need help with these last boxes? Rachel asked. Actually, yes. I picked up a box marked kitchen. But first, let's get rid of that pendant. She touched it again, hesitating. How? I smiled, remembering the weight of my own Tiffany pendant, now sitting at the bottom of the harbor. I know a place. We walked out together, past Marcus's car, past the life I'd thought I wanted, towards something undefined but undeniably mine. He didn't follow. The movers finished loading the truck as the sun set, casting long shadows across the driveway. I handed them my new address, a downtown apartment, high enough to see the harbor. Ready? Rachel asked. I looked back at the house one last time. Through the window, I could see the empty spaces where my things had been, the marks on the walls where photos once hung. Linda would hate those marks, those imperfect reminders of what had been lost. Good. You know what the strangest part is? I said, locking the door for the last time. I actually feel sorry for them. Why? Because they'll never understand what they lost. They'll blame everyone else, tell new lies, find new victims. But they'll never know what it feels like to just be real. Rachel unclasped the pendant, letting it dangle from her fingers. To the harbor. To the harbor. We left the house behind, Two women carrying a box of broken promises and a piece of jewelry that had once meant ownership. Behind us, Marcus's car started up, then drove away in the opposite direction. I didn't watch it go. I was too busy watching where I was heading.
You think you can just walk away, Caroline? The real fight's just starting, and it's one you'll lose. Mark's voice dripped with venom as he spat those words at me. I should have seen it coming, the slow disintegration of the man I thought I knew. The man I fell in love with, whose charm and ambition first captivated me. Mark Evans, heir to the Evans construction empire, swept me off my feet with his confidence and grand visions for our future together. Those early years were a whirlwind of passion and excitement. We traveled the world, dined at the finest restaurants, and dreamed of building our own legacy. But barely a year into our marriage, the cracks began to show. The man who once showered me with affection and attentiveness grew distant and dismissive. Date nights were replaced by late nights at the office. Romantic gestures faded into cold indifference. And when I tried to confront him, to salvage the love we once shared, he shut me down with harsh words and accusations. "You're the one who's changed, Caroline," he'd say, his voice laced with disdain. "You're not the supportive wife I need. You're holding me back." Desperate for understanding, I turned to our friends, but they merely echoed Mark's sentiments. "That's just how men are sometimes," they'd say with a shrug. "You have to give him space." Their dismissive attitudes only deepened my despair. Was I truly the problem? The flawed partner failing to meet Mark's needs? Doubt crept in, eroding my once unshakable confidence. Yet deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. The man I loved had become a stranger, consumed by a darkness I couldn't comprehend. And as the years ticked by, that darkness only grew, casting an inescapable shadow over our marriage. As the years crawled by, Mark's control over me tightened like a vice. He isolated me from friends and family, making me increasingly dependent on his approval. My once vibrant spirit withered under his constant criticisms. "Why can't you be more like Jessica?" he'd sneer, referring to his coworker at Evans Construction. "She understands the sacrifices it takes to be successful." Jessica. The name alone made my blood boil. She was Mark's new favorite, the young protégé he constantly praised while belittling me as a failure of a wife. "Maybe if you put in half the effort Jessica does, I wouldn't have to work such long hours," he'd taunt, his eyes cold and unfeeling. Whenever I dared voice my concerns to our inner circle, they simply brushed them off as the ramblings of a jealous, insecure wife. "Mark's just under a lot of stress," they'd insist. "You need to be more supportive." Only my sister Kate saw through the facade. "He's manipulating you, Caroline," she pleaded. "This isn't the man you married." But I was too deep in Mark's web of lies to listen. He'd convinced me that my role was to stand by his side, no matter what. To question him was to betray our vows. "You're lucky to have a man like me," he'd snarl, his grip on my arm bruising. "Most women would kill for this life." So I stayed. I endured the emotional neglect, the financial control, the constant belittling, all in the name of keeping my marriage intact. Until one night, everything changed. Kate had come over unannounced, a frantic look in her eyes. "Caroline, we need to talk." She thrust a folder into my hands, the contents spilling out like a damning confession. Bank statements, hotel receipts, even grainy photographs, all evidence of Mark's double life. "He's been having an affair," Kate breathed, her voice trembling, "with Jessica." In that moment, the blinders fell from my eyes. The late nights, the unexplained expenses, the endless praise for his coworker, it all made sense. Mark had betrayed me in the cruelest way possible, and Jessica, that conniving snake, had helped him do it. The evidence of Mark's betrayal was undeniable, but something didn't add up. Why would a successful heir to a multi-million-dollar company risk everything for an affair? Kate insisted we dig deeper. "There has to be more to this," she said, her brow furrowed. "Mark's not just throwing away his marriage, he's jeopardizing his entire future." That's when I remembered Greg, an old friend from college who now worked at a competing construction firm. If anyone had insight into Mark's business dealings, it would be him. I arranged a discreet meeting at a quiet cafe. Greg's face paled as I laid out the sordid details. "Caroline, I had no idea things were so bad with Mark," he said, shaking his head. "But you're right to be suspicious. Evans Construction is in serious trouble. According to Greg, the company was drowning in debt from a series of botched deals and mismanaged projects, all orchestrated by none other than my esteemed husband. Mark had been gambling away the family fortune, taking increasingly bigger risks in a desperate attempt to keep the business afloat. He's been cooking the books for years, Greg revealed grimly. If word gets out, Evans Construction could face total collapse. Suddenly, the puzzle pieces fell into place. Mark's affairs, his erratic behavior, his obsession with maintaining a lavish lifestyle, it all stemmed from his desperation to hide the truth about the company's dire financial straits. I confronted him that night, waving the damning paperwork in his face. How could you do this, Mark? To me, to your family's legacy. For once, he didn't have a snide remark or scathing put-down. He simply stared back at me, eyes hollow and haunted. You wouldn't understand, he muttered darkly. I did what I had to do to protect us. But his platitudes rang hollow. I knew the real Mark now, a deceitful, selfish man willing to sacrifice everything for his own greed and pride. There was only one person I could turn to, Kate. She'd been right about Mark all along, and now she was the only one I could trust to help me expose his web of lies. We need to gather evidence, she declared, her voice steely with determination. Document every shady deal, every siphoned dollar. Then we take the whole truth to his father and the board. I nodded, a newfound resolve settling over me. For too long, I'd been Mark's victim, cowering in fear and self-doubt. But no more. It was time to fight back and make him pay for his betrayal. With Kate's help, I hired a private investigator to uncover the full extent of Mark's misdeeds. Sam Johnson was discreet, professional, and highly recommended. If anyone could get to the bottom of this sordid mess, it was him. A week later, Sam arrived at my door, a thick file tucked under his arm. I've got everything you need, Mrs. Evans, he said grimly. And I have to warn you, it's not pretty. Sam's findings exposed a tangled web of lies that made my head spin. Not only had Mark been having an affair with Jessica for over 2 years, but he'd been funneling company funds to support their lavish rendezvous and Jessica's expensive tastes. Take a look at these receipts, Sam said, spreading out a stack of documents. 5-star hotels, designer clothes, even a down payment on a luxury condo, all purchased with money embezzled from Evans Construction. But the biggest bombshell? Jessica's true motivations for seducing Mark in the first place. Turns out, she's had her sights set on your husband for a long time, Sam revealed, ever since they were rivals back in high school. Jessica had always envied the life of privilege that Mark was born into, and when she weaseled her way into a job at his company, she saw her chance to claw her way up the social ladder, by any means necessary. She's a real piece of work, Sam said, disgust etched across his face, using her looks and charm to latch on to wealthy men, bleeding them dry before moving on to her next target. As if the betrayal weren't enough, Mark had put our entire future at risk through his reckless behavior. Sam's investigation confirmed that if the company's financial troubles became public knowledge, Evans Construction would likely face bankruptcy and total ruin. I sat in stunned silence, the weight of Mark's deception crushing me. How could the man I once loved have fallen so far? And with Jessica's poisonous influence whispering in his ear, enabling his worst impulses. We've got everything we need to bury that bastard, Sam declared. The evidence is rock solid. All that's left is for you to decide what to do with it. I didn't hesitate. I want him exposed, I said, my voice trembling with fury. The board, his father, everyone. They all need to know what kind of man Mark Evans really is. Sam nodded, a glimmer of respect in his eyes. You got it, Mrs. Evans. It's time to make them pay for what they've done. With the truth finally laid bare, there would be no more lies, no more covering for Mark's misdeeds. The masks were finally off, and I was done playing the victim. Armed with the damning evidence, I summoned Mark to our home under the guise of wanting to talk things over. He arrived cocky and smug, clearly expecting another round of hollow apologies and promises to change. But this time, I was the one in control. Have a seat, Mark, I said coolly, gesturing towards the sofa. He quirked an eyebrow but complied, that arrogant smirk still plastered across his face. I wasted no time cutting to the chase. I know everything, I stated, slamming the thick file onto the coffee table. The affairs, the money laundering, all of it. Mark's expression faltered, his bravado cracking slightly. "Caroline, listen." "No, you listen," I snapped, leaning forward. "This little game of yours is over. I have proof of your misdeeds, enough to bury you and your precious Evans construction for good." He paled, eyes widening as he took in the reams of incriminating evidence laid out before him. For a brief moment, I almost felt a pang of pity watching his world crumble. Then he opened his mouth. "You stupid, ungrateful bitch," he seethed, spittle flying from his lips. "After everything I've done for you, for us, this is how you repay me?" My pity evaporated, replaced by a cold fury. "I repaid you?" I shot back, incredulous. "You betrayed me, Mark. You cheated, lied, stole, all to fund your tawdry little affair with Jessica." The mention of her name seemed to spur him into a rage. He lunged towards me, hands outstretched as if to strike me. "Don't you dare speak her name," he hissed, his face twisted into an ugly sneer. "Jessica's the only one who understands me, who gives me what I need. You're just a pathetic, frigid excuse for a wife." His vicious tirade broke the final thread tethering me to the man I once loved. This hateful, cruel stranger was the real Mark Evans, and I was finally free of his toxic grip. "Get out," I said, my voice steady and cold. "Take your insults, your empty threats, and get the hell out of my life for good." He opened his mouth, doubtless to spew more vitriol, but I cut him off. "I'm done being your victim, Mark. The evidence goes to the board first thing in the morning. After that..." I let the implication hang in the air. For a long moment we simply stared at each other. Him seething with impotent rage, me resolute and unbowed. Finally he turned on his heel and stormed out, the door slamming behind him with an air of finality. I exhaled slowly, the weight of years of torment finally lifting from my shoulders. With Kate's fierce support and guidance, I would expose Mark's treachery to his family, to the board, to the world, and I would do it without flinching or faltering. No more games, no more masks. The real fight was only just beginning, and this time I would be the one emerging victorious. The next morning, I strode into the sleek high-rise that housed Evans Construction's corporate offices, the weight of the incriminating file heavy in my hands. Kate walked by my side, her presence bolstering my resolve. "You've got this, sis," she murmured as we approached the imposing double doors leading to the boardroom. "It's time to make that snake pay." I nodded curtly, squaring my shoulders as I pushed open the doors. A hush fell over the room as over a dozen sets of eyes swiveled towards me, including those of Mark and his mistress Jessica. Mark's father, Thomas Evans, presided at the head of the long table, his craggy features set in a disapproving scowl. "This is highly irregular, Caroline," he barked out. "Explanations now." "Of course, Mr. Evans," I replied, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. "I have evidence here that directly pertains to the future well-being of this company." Ignoring Mark's murderous glare, I proceeded to lay out the entire sordid saga, the affairs, the embezzlement, the reckless business deals that had brought Evans Construction to the brink of ruin. With each damning revelation, the air seemed to grow thicker with tension. "You're lying!" Mark exploded halfway through, leaping to his feet and upending his chair. "These are nothing but fabrications, the desperate lies of a jealous wife." I simply arched an eyebrow, sliding the photographic proof of his trysts with Jessica across the table. "Does this look fabricated to you?" I asked coolly. Mark fell silent, fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. Jessica, for her part, shrank back in her seat, the cool, calculating seductress now exposed as the two-bit fraud she was. By the time I finished my presentation, a strangled silence hung over the room. No one dared meet my gaze. No one except Thomas Evans himself. The old man's face was thunderous, his eyes blazing with a potent mix of fury and shame. Slowly, he raised his gaze to lock with his son's. "How could you, boy?" he rasped, the words dripping with bitterness and disgust. "Have you no honor, no sense of the sacrifices I made to build this company from nothing?" Mark opened his mouth, perhaps to offer another feeble denial, but his father silenced him with a raised hand. "I don't want to hear it," Thomas growled. "As of this moment, you are stripped of your position and authority. The decisions you've made, the lies and deception," he shook his head slowly, "you've disgraced this family's name for the last time." As Mark sputtered incoherent protests, his father's eyes found mine once more. "Mrs. Evans, it appears I owe you a debt of gratitude. and an apology for failing to see the truth sooner. The words were gruff, but they carried a weight of respect I'd never imagined from the imposing family patriarch. I inclined my head in silent acknowledgement. "I expect your full cooperation in rooting out this cancer," Thomas continued, sweeping his gaze over the shaken board members. "Starting today, we begin setting things right." As the disgraced former heir and his disgraced mistress were ushered from the room, I allowed myself a small, vindicated smile. The first battle had been won, but the war was only just beginning. Because in that moment of reckoning, a new and chilling realization had taken root in my mind. Jessica's subterfuge ran far deeper than a mere affair, and I had a sinking suspicion that her role in undermining Evan's construction was just the opening salvo of a much larger, more nefarious plot. In the aftermath of Mark's very public downfall, the legal proceedings moved swiftly. Lawyers descended like vultures, filing suits and countersuits as the once mighty Evans family fought to preserve their legacy. Through it all, Sam the private investigator remained a steadfast ally, his dogged determination to unravel the full truth proving invaluable. And with each new revelation, the extent of Jessica's betrayal grew more staggering. "You were right, Caroline," he told me grimly one afternoon as we pored over stacks of financial records. "Jessica's role in this goes far deeper than a simple affair." It turned out the manipulative vixen had an even more scandalous history with the Evans family, one that predated her affair with Mark entirely. Years earlier, fresh out of college, Jessica had briefly been involved with none other than Thomas Evans himself. She was a bright young intern and he was a powerful, wealthy businessman, Sam explained, disgust clouding his features. The whole sordid thing only lasted a few months before Thomas came to his senses and broke it off, but not before Jessica got her hooks into some sensitive company information. Information that, years later, she was able to parlay into weaseling her way into a job at Evans Construction and into Mark's bed. Her entire seduction had been a calculated long con, designed to bleed the company dry from the inside out. "But that's not even the worst of it," Sam continued, pulling out a confidential dossier. "Take a look at who Jessica's been reporting to all this time." The name on the top sheet made my blood run cold. Andrew Thompson, CEO of Apex Developments, and Thomas Evans' oldest, bitterest rival in the construction game. "You're telling me this was all an elaborate scheme for a corporate takeover?" I breathed, the pieces finally falling into place. Sam's answering nod was grim. "Looks like it. From what I could dig up, Thompson's been looking for a way to take down the Evans empire for years. Planting his little honey trap as a mole was a low blow, but an ingenious one." As the truth sank in, a wave of rage washed over me, not just at Jessica's deceit, but at the sheer depth of Mark's gullibility and weakness. How could he have allowed himself to be so thoroughly manipulated, to be used as a mere pawn in someone else's long game of revenge? The answer, of course, was the same as it had always been: pride and hubris, the toxic combination that had blinded Mark to reality time and again. Even now, facing potential criminal charges and financial ruin, he still couldn't admit the role he'd played in his own downfall. "He's going to try to take you down with him, you know," Sam warned, catching the thunderous expression on my face. "The lawyers are already spinning this as some sort of twisted vendetta on your part." I shook my head, resolute. "Let them try. I have the truth on my side this time, and I'm not afraid to fight for it." With the legal battle looming and the fate of Evans Construction hanging by a thread, it was time to make the tough decisions, to separate the innocent from the guilty and excise the rot that had nearly destroyed everything. And I knew just where to spy, rallying the one person who had more reason than anyone to hate Mark and Jessica: Thomas Evans. In the weeks following the explosive boardroom confrontation, the Evans family rallied around a singular mission: saving their legacy from total destruction. With the looming threat of a hostile takeover by Andrew Thompson's Apex Developments, we had to move swiftly and decisively. Surprisingly, my strongest ally in this fight was the man I once feared most: Thomas Evans. "You were right about my son," the old man had growled during one of our clandestine strategy sessions. "Bloody fool nearly flushed everything I've built down the drain with his arrogance." There was a flicker of paternal disappointment in his eyes, quickly shuttered. "No more. It's time to cut out the cancer before it spreads any further." With Sam's intel on Jessica and Thompson's underhanded dealings, we began systematically dismantling their twisted scheme from the inside out. Shady real estate deals were exposed, insider trading uncovered, corporate funds traced to offshore accounts. "They're sloppy," Sam noted with grim satisfaction as we reviewed the mounting evidence. "Got too cocky, started leaving a trail." Meanwhile, on the legal front, a barrage of lawsuits and criminal charges rained down on Jessica and her corporate conspirators. Between the paper trail and my own sworn testimony, her role as a duplicitous mole was undeniable. "Going to make an example of that two-bit hustler," Thomas vowed, his eyes glinting with cold fury. "Maybe then others will think twice before trying to take what's mine." As for Mark, well, my former husband had become a ghost, fading into obscurity as the world he once dominated crumbled around him. The golden sun had well and truly fallen, his wealth and power stripped away to reveal the petty, vindictive man beneath. "You want to see him?" Kate asked one day, catching me staring pensively at an old photo of us from happier times. "One of my friends spotted him last week, said he's really hit rock bottom." I shook my head, feeling an unexpected pang of, what? Pity? Sadness? It was hard to say. "No, I'm done wasting energy on Mark Evans," I replied firmly. "My focus now is on the future, for me and for the company." And what a future it was shaping up to be. Against all odds, the Evans family had rebounded, our counterattack leaving Jessica and Thompson's rivals reeling. Cherry on top, an opportunity I once could scarcely have dreamed of. "Need a steady hand to guide us through these choppy waters," Thomas declared gruffly, appraising me with frank respect. "The board wants you at the helm, Caroline. Time to take your rightful place as the new head of Evans Construction." My first instinct was to balk. Who was I, the former minority wife, to take over leadership of such a prestigious company? But then I caught Kate's proud, encouraging smile from across the room, and my resolve solidified. This was my chance to cement a new legacy. To rebuild from the ashes of deception and betrayal, creating something resilient and true. A chance to take control of my own destiny, instead of letting it be dictated by the whims of duplicitous men. "I accept," I said simply, holding Thomas Evans's inscrutable gaze. "It will be an honor to help shape the company's future." And as his craggy features broke into a rare smile of approval, I knew I'd made the right choice. The victim had reclaimed her power, and the rebuild was only just beginning.